We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. Being back on video made Tom stumble over his words just a little bit.
I was just thinking I'm going to miss, being able to, pick my nose and, scratching uncomfortable to show places.
Oh, well, I was just going to say your beard, because you have been scratching your beard quite a bit. Sometimes in front of your the microphone that was on your headset, yes. But actually that shouldn't matter as much because you're on your good mic now. So
I don't know. I never really thought about that. Unfortunately, that's just something I do now. So yeah, I should have shaved. I didn't shave. So whatever. I've got a goatee, or Van Dyke technically, I guess is what it's called. So I've got that going on, but I was supposed to shave the rest of it, and I didn't do it. But whatever. I'm back on video, guys.
Yes,
Welcome
is.
Back. This is
if you haven't put the pieces together on YouTube, Tom's video is back. He's no longer just a logo. There's something to look at other than my face, and that is always a good thing. I miss
being the logo. Is my lip sync better now? Is the lip sync?
Your lip sync in Skype is better. Whether or not it'll be better in OBS,
right?
Who knows? I must say, you being a logo did make the lip sync excellent on your end. So
that is true. That is true. Yes. So the saga with the house is almost to completion.
Hooray!
This time next week, I should be reporting that I have granite.
All right.
I don't know that it means I will have kitchen equipment, but I will have granite. So hopefully 2 weeks from today, I will be saying, we've got a functional kitchen again.
That would be
that's what I'm
for the best.
Hoping for.
Yeah.
But we will see. I have
Okey-doke.
learned that nothing. There is no schedule that can be kept by contractors and their ilk.
That's a pretty common refrain.
Well, so I've got a friend. He's not really my friend, but a Facebook friend, and he is a painter. And his posts about how frustrated he is with other people's work and how their lack of attention to detail and their inability to be punctual and stuff like that gives me hope that there are, in fact, people out there that do a good job and care about their work and stuff like that.
Oh, there are.
And these guys mostly do, for the most part, but only if they're like 11-year-old children. If you're not watching them, they're gonna just whatever, just throw the paint up there. He won't know the difference.
Or when he does, we won't be here. So
that's right. I mean, surely he won't confront us on it. Yeah, you kind of walked into the wrong house for that one.
A lot of people don't, you roll the dice, play the odds.
Play the odds, that's right. That's exactly what it is. So my, the bathroom is officially finished. That's a separate contractor. That guy was very new. It's his first really big job, and let's just say it was quite the learning experience for him. In fact, the tile guy took me aside and whispered to him, "Thank you for making him make me redo this tile, because he needs to know that that's not a good enough job."
Right.
I'm not. You could be welcome, I guess, but yeah, I literally do not care. So the sad part is that the tile, it's like a special. It's called an infinity drain. It makes it look like the tile's going all the way across the floor.
Right.
Blah blah blah. Yeah, and there's no real drain there, but it's dual side. You can flip it over and have it just be like a stainless steel bar, or you can have it with a tile insert, and I don't like the tile insert. I'm going to flip it over anyways. After I had him redo it 3 times, I'm going to flip it and just have it be the stainless steel side. But I don't want to tell him that because I think he'll cry just a little. He might just cry.
You don't think he's an AVRant podcast listener?
I don't think he ever wants to hear my voice again. I'm going to be honest with you.
Right.
I'm going to be honest with you. I think there's a lot of people who don't want to hear my voice. I mean, maybe even people listening to this podcast right now. They're like, "That's it.
That's a
After
hard
200,000 hours of this guy.
That's right.
I'm done. I'm out." Yes. So, How's things with you, Rob? No one cares about me. How's things with you?
Well, first of all, that's not true. Lots of people care about you, and things over here are pretty all right. It's been a pretty quiet week, honestly. So nothing tremendously exciting happening on my end. Which, you know what? I'll take it. I will take not having just world-shattering news every 2 minutes and
right.
Massive changes from day to day, if not hour to hour. So I will take a quiet week once in a while. But we do. I might as well say it now. Have something upcoming between 3 podcasts. We've hinted at this a little bit. If you listen at all to particularly DJ over the Brightside Home Theater Podcast, he's mentioned this.
We can't keep his dang mouth shut. Jesus, DJ.
He's excited.
Keep a secret. That's what I tell you. You can't tell. If you got a secret, you tell one guy. You might as well have told everybody, and DJ's that guy.
I see.
God.
I see. The opposite would be Braden, because I still haven't seen him show up in our Google Doc. But yes, hinting at all of that, the HT guys, the HDTV and Home Theater Podcast, Ara Braden and Braden Russell, plus DJ over at Brightside Home Theater, plus Tom and Lee and myself. We're all going to be getting together for a 6-man podcast. That's going to be like the Thanksgiving episode across all 3 of our podcasts. That's the idea we have in mind, but we are going to be recording it ahead of time as long as we can. Still haven't nailed down an exact time, but that's the plan. A 3 podcast 6-man show.
So it's going to be one show that's going to be on everybody's stations? Is that what's going to be? Everybody's podcast and the same show, be broadcasting the same show?
Yeah, that's what the HT guys wanted to do. Instead of dividing it up into 3 separate parts, then they're just like, nah, let's just make one show and put it out there. Less editing.
Oh. How long are we planning on this being?
I have no idea. Going by what people have written into the topic list, it could go a while, because I was like, everybody pick one thing, and everybody wrote down like 3. So, yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, you see, I wasn't sure. I thought I had to. In fact, I think I'm changing all of mine. I thought we were doing. I needed 3 things because there's 3 podcasts, so one for each podcast is what I thought. So
no, I was like, one thing from each category for each person. 3 different sort of topics that we're covering, but regardless, this is all kind of. I didn't really
vote on that. If I had voted on that, I would have voted for 3 different podcasts. But
I know. Not a ton is totally set in stone yet. This is all very confusing for people listening to it as Tom and I talk through it, and it might all change from there. But what will be happening? The whole reason I'm bringing this up and mentioning it to our audience is we want to collect 1 question from each podcast, something where you, dear listener, who wants to write in with a question, wants to hear an answer from all 6 people. So, just asking us, hey, which receiver should I buy? That's probably not the type of question to ask for, this particular venture. Something where you're wanting the opinions of all 6 of us, which is going to be a rarity to get all at once. Normally, you'd have to write into 3 separate shows and get 3 separate answers. No, this you can get it all in one shebang. So that's the type of question we're looking for. Send it on into us. Do not ask us. I mentioned this will be the Thanksgiving show. Do not ask us what hardware or what software, movies or whatever we're thankful for, because that is the sort of topic we will already be covering as part of the show. If you have a question where you're like, hey man, I would really love to hear all 6 of these gentlemen weigh in on this, that's the type of question we want. Send that on in to our regular email, question@avrant.com. We'll only be selecting 1 question, so the HT guys, they'll select 1 question, AVRant will select 1 question, DJ over at Brightside, he'll select 1 question. So it'll be 3 questions on the show, but we're soliciting them from our respective audiences. Naturally, there's crossover. Feel free to send your question to all 3 of us. We're going to be writing down which one we've selected, so maybe one of the others will choose you if we don't. But that's what we're hoping for. I guess that'll be open for about at least 1 week. You've heard it now. Maybe 2 weeks. Again, we don't know when we're actually scheduling to record this thing, but there you go. The sooner the better, honestly, to send that in. Question@avrant.com if you would like that to be part of that show.
So evening is basically where everybody's thinking about doing this, right? It's not during the day.
If you say evening, then that's fine. Because most of us
I can
are
theoretically do it during the day. I'm trying to rope my wife into not letting me, but I'm thinking that the fact that I'm hardwired might be enough to override all the Wi-Fi that's happening in this house. But we will see. We're gonna have to test it out, Rob.
I know.
We'll do a test at some point when I've got. We could do it in a day, really, but when I feel like it, I suppose. But, yeah. Okay, well, this will be interesting. We'll see how this goes.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's an experiment.
It's a battle royale of podcasts. 3 podcasts enter, 1 podcast exits.
That's actually kind of true. There's going to be 1 episode between the 3 of us.
I know. I feel like there's people who listen to all 3 of us are going to be like, wait a second, I got to listen to the same thing 3 times?
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's not 2 hours, I guarantee you Rob's going to make us record more to make sure it's at least 2 hours.
Well, I don't want to get behind on questions. No, not that show. I think we'll still end up with a regular show that week.
That's fine, too. Yeah, shall we put it on Thanksgiving Day? Is that the idea?
That's the idea. Put out American Thanksgiving, by the way. Canadian Thanksgiving's already come and gone. Too late for us to do that.
Sorry, guys. You guys shouldn't have rushed it. Should have waited. Hung out with us. All right, this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You can go to avrant.com, leave us a comment there, facebook.com/avrantpodcast, youtube.com/avrant. You can contact Rob directly, rob@avrant.com. His Twitter's at FirstReflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter is at avrant_Tom. That being said, if you want your question answered and you don't email question@avrant.com, then, maybe we will, maybe. I don't know.
These days, I'm leaving them off the show unless it's something where I'm like, ooh, that's something I really want the whole audience to hear. We have one of those this week, as I alluded to last week. But yes, question@avrant.com, so the email. That's the way to go.
The answer is, if you're going to send it to us via Twitter, be compelling. Be very, very interesting and topical or something like that. I don't know. There's so many weird things happening in AV right now. I'm just like... every once in a while something will pop up in my feed and I'm like, yeah, okay, well, I guess people can buy that if they were dumb, but whatever. All right, we're going to thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, all you have to do is support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to patreon.com/AVRant podcast. There you can sign up to be a contributing subscriber to our, or contributing subscriber. That makes sense. Those are words that hang together to our podcast. That allows you, Patreon will take some money from you, give it to us, most of it at least, and they'll do that monthly. So a minimum of $1 a month, which is only, think about it, $12 a year. It's not that bad. I mean, you pay a lot more than that for price. I mean, you gotta admit, for upwards of 10 hours a month of us, or more sometimes, depending on how the weeks lay out. That's pretty good.
Pretty much at least 8.
So we want to thank our 123 patrons over at patreon.com.
We sure do. That's patreon.com/AVRant podcast. If you would like to sign up, think of it as a voluntary subscription, if you please. And 123 patrons over there, holding pretty steady at that the past 3 weeks. So that's all right. Happy with that number. Would love to see it go up. Why not?
Somebody tell 2 friends.
That's right.
I don't care who you are. Whoever does it first gets the prize. The prizes that I say thank you on this podcast.
All right.
If you can't support us financially, we completely understand. Just tell us how you supported us, and we will thank you. So we want to thank Steve, and he helped out Rob on Twitter by confirming that the upcoming Ultra HD Blu-ray release of the Hobbit trilogy are in 24 frames per second only, no high frame rate. There is literally no chance. I have not seen those movies, and I don't... Everything... I love the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and I feel like if I watch the Hobbit trilogy, I will no longer love it. It's the same reason why I haven't watched the last season of Game of Thrones, because I feel like it'll ruin the whole thing for me. So, I'm not watching it, no matter how many frames it has.
Now, there's going to be like an ultimate collector's edition of the entire Lord of the Rings and Hobbit together with all the special features, because this upcoming one for Christmas doesn't have all the special features, although it does have both the theatrical and extended cuts. Haven't heard yet if the ultimate collector's edition will have the high frame rate versions of the Hobbit. Now, some people are going to be like, I don't want the high frame rate versions. But but I want the option, because every time I watch something in high frame rate, I still have it in my head that I'm not going to like this. I hate the soap opera effect. I'm not going to want to watch it in high frame rate. And then I watch it, I'm like, that's okay. It's different. Yeah. I can definitely see it, but there are pluses to it in addition to some minuses. So
I would watch a Hobbit scene in high frame rate just to check out that part of it. But that's about as far as I would go. That's the level of commitment I have towards that.
Fair enough.
So thank you, Steve.
Yes.
We also want to thank David, John, and Aaron for their notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast chugging along during these tumultuous, is that a word?
Tumultuous
times.
Seems like the closest word.
Yeah, I was getting there.
Yes.
I was getting there.
David, John, Aaron, really do appreciate those notes of gratitude and encouragement that have been sent in to us. And we want to say thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions to the podcast. It's the only way this thing keeps going, so it is really appreciated on our end. And big thanks to everybody who keeps supporting us. Thank you.
There you go. So in the news, the day after we recorded last week and reported that Sony is ready for PlayStation 5 TVs when they get their HDMI 2.1 firmware updates until winter 2020, Sony dropped a firmware update because people on YouTube were just dying to leave us comments about how wrong we were.
You gotta make us liars.
The X900H and the Z8H models now support 4K 120 and 8K 60 in the case of the Z8H.
That's their 8K TV.
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. It threw me off is that my cursor, it looks like a little eye.
Yeah.
And I thought it was like, it was right perfectly like it was like the power of I on that. I was like, how do I read the power of I on this thing? So sorry, guys. That was my bad. And they'll have ER, but variable refresh rate and auto low latency mode. I am mush mouth tonight. Auto low latency mode are still missing. Sony says they are just waiting on official certification from an HDMI test center, and then those features will be added by yet another firmware update. So
maybe the news of
this does not shock me.
Between winter 2020 and spring 2021 will end up true in the end. That it'll take until then for all of the HDMI 2.1 features to arrive. That's still a possibility, but no. The good news is 4K 120 support is here, and particularly eARC support is here. Why that didn't exist out of the box is beyond me, but whatever, it's here now. That's good news.
Yeah. This really doesn't surprise me at all because I didn't think that Sony was going to wait. They can't take the pressure, as far as all the negative press they're going to get, and people love bagging on Sony anyway. So it doesn't surprise me at all that they decided to push this out as fast, even if those incomplete.
Right.
They're like, I don't care. You got the frame rate, get it.
We marketed this TV, the X900H in particular, as ready for PlayStation 5. If it is not, when the PlayStation 5 launches, that's going to be a bad look.
That's going to be a problem, yeah. So, Sound United completed their acquisition of Bowers and Wilkins B&W, the speakers we literally clickbaited last week.
That's right.
Rob was like, I said, we should call it Just Say No to B&W. He goes, people are going to hate that. I'm like, I know. It'll be funny.
That's the idea.
I'm not really that much of a troll, but B&W's got it coming. They're like...
They really never did anything to us.
No, not to me personally or anything. I mean, I'm sure they're perfectly nice people, but it's kind of like poking fun at Bill Gates. It doesn't make any difference that he cured malaria someplace by just throwing money at malaria until it went away. Doesn't matter. He's so rich. You're like, yeah, kind of a geek, dude. Whatever, nerd. I mean, it's easy. And he's like, well, I got lots of money, so shut up. I'm like, I know, right? See, we're here now. We can be friends. So. B&W, we can be friends.
Sure.
I mean, I'm not going to own your speakers. I'm sorry. But we could be friends. I got no problems with your speakers. I just, but this actually makes a lot of sense on their Sound United's part because they've got the Macintosh line. And you're like, now I've got speakers to put next to them. Even though Macintosh does make their own speakers, but, this just gives them another, it makes sense in their sort of portfolio. And the thing I've liked about Sound United, at least so far, is that you're not seeing a lot of crossover micromanagement, like now that we own Denon and Marantz, and what other do they own Onkyo now too? Who else do they own?
No, they were going to at one point, but that deal didn't go through. So
but you're not
Polk
seeing
Audio,
tubes.
Definitive Technology, Boston Acoustics, those are all speaker brands they own.
Yeah, you're not seeing tubes from the Macintosh coming in, or the little what do they call them? The little
the VU meters.
VU meters start popping up in Marantz because they own Macintosh. Right. So I do like that they let their companies keep their own identity.
Yeah.
They're just an umbrella company that owns them all. And I think this makes sense for that company.
Sure.
So I think it's good. All right, so LG's rollable OLED, I'm not calling it a ROLED.
I want to call it ROLED. Shouldn't it be called ROLED? If you are a rollable OLED, shouldn't you be a ROLED? I think so.
It sounds like something if you have an upset stomach. It's like the off-brand Rolade.
Mm-hmm.
The roulette. Anyways, it's no longer vaporware. You can now buy the 65-inch RX model for $87,000.
Right. It's a bit more
inches.
than anybody was anticipating.
Kind of feels high. Kind of feels a little bit on the high side.
Yeah.
I feel like they're going to sell 2 and then drop the price immediately. Like, we got those 2. Yes.
We paid off the R&D, right? Yeah.
That means Canadians are getting a heck of a good exchange rate since it's listed for only $90,000 Canadian from some Canadian retailers. Already on sale, guys.
I know.
Hey?
That's some reason to cross-border ship right there. I don't know what the shipping cost on it is. I'm sure it's labeled as highly fragile.
I mean, but still, it's smaller than a TV would be. It's a box. It's a little circle.
It's rolled into its aluminum casing that also acts as a sound system.
Sound system. Shut up. All right, this comes from our listener, Karl. Vulcan Video and I Love Video were independent video rental stores that have operated in Texas since 1983. They've specialized in rare and hard-to-find VHS and DVD collections, and now they are closing. The movie-loving folks over at Alamo Drafthouse felt it would be a crime for those curated collections to end up on eBay or even worse, destroyed, so they are converting the lobby of their South Lamar location into a video vortex rental location, and these rare video collections shall live on there. Best of all, you can borrow these movies for free. Alamo is just doing this because they love movies and want these collections to be preserved.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, is somebody doing something nice and not expecting anything in exchange? What is this
know.
still 2020? I don't think this is 2020. This is either from 2021 or 2019. This did not happen this year. I'm sorry.
I mean, I don't even necessarily want them to do this. I'm like, charge something.
Yeah.
Nobody is going to be angry at you for charging something. Make it a reasonable price by all means. But right. Regardless, it is nice that there are genuine movie lovers out there who are interested in preserving things that are rare and hard to find. And so, full agreement. Wonderful that they are using some of their resources that way. Hopefully Alamo Drafthouse keeps going because they are the movie theater chain that is for people who actually love movies as opposed to just wanting a, social gathering while something plays in the background. That's not Alamo Drafthouse. Right. So good on them, and happy to hear that. Sorry that these stores are closing. It's it's a legacy that we're seeing disappear now. But good that somebody was around who cared enough to preserve it as well as they're able to.
Right. So when I lived in San Francisco, this was back when VHS was still a thing. There were like all these little specialty. Rental place that you go to, and we would go downtown to some little place in the Mission District, or I can't even remember where else we went, that had like if you wanted a John Woo movie, you can go find it down there, and that was like the only place you can find it, or a Jet Li imports or these sorts of things. So we used to do that sort of stuff quite a bit back then, but that, of course, that stuff has all disappeared. And one of the things that's bothered me most about this whole conversion to streaming, while I love the convenience of it, there isn't access. Like my kids are watching Dragon Ball, the original series, on Hulu because it's available, but Dragon Ball Z is not. I think it's only available on like the Funimation streaming service. Like I'm not paying for another streaming service, guys. Especially, if I was, it'd be Shudder because I love horror movies and I pretty much watched all of them on all the services that exist. And I watch the ones they have left. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Well, technically it's supposed to be scary, but so I would love to go. If I was going to get one, that would be that. So not having access to some of these things that are especially some of the legacy. I know it's like super bad old Godzilla-esque movies or TV series that we've never heard of because it was only in Japan. I would love to have at least have access to that stuff, but you really don't anymore. You just it was hard to find to begin with, but now it's literally not available.
Right.
So it is something to consider. How much are we actually losing as we shift to all digital?
On top of that, the part I really hate is things being altered, censored, cut down. George
Lucas, we're looking at you.
But
sorry, buddy.
Talking about like there's an episode of Community that is just gone. It's just gone now. Can't find it on any of the streaming services because there is a blackface moment, which is entirely highlighted as being exactly what it is, and all the characters comment on it, and I'm like, why why must the entire episode cease to exist because of that? But that's what we're dealing with these days, unfortunately. So.
Right now, that's what we're dealing with. Yeah. But I think that we'll see a pushback eventually on that, because it was just like right after 9/11, and they were talking about taking because there was advertisements and stuff with Spider-Man. Remember the original Spider-Man in the Twin Towers, and he caught like a helicopter in the web between the two of them or whatever, and they took that out. Now then they started talking about, we're gonna take any older video, we're gonna go and digitally alter it. So
there was like the taking it out of the Friends intro, right? Because it was there in the Friends intro. Yeah, well, that was another news story I didn't bother writing in, but just that they've started putting a warning on the front of things on Disney Plus that are from eras past that contained racial depictions or sexual depictions or whatever it was, which at the time was very normal in the culture. But of course, we look through it to today's lens, and it is offensive stuff. We're not saying that, but the idea of either not having that content existing at all or censoring that content and altering it. I'm like, no, I'm not in favor of that. This is what existed. But you know what? I think that is the way to handle it. You put in an explanation of it. That's what Warner Brothers has been doing for a long time on HBO's services. So that to me is okay. By all means, explain that for our audiences that don't have the historical context. Let's have that information right there and available, but let's not try to erase things from history either. So,
Right. So H.P. Lovecraft, for those of you who know who that is, he's a writer from the early 1900s, or I guess 20th century. So it was the 1920s, right? It was about when he was writing, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I'm not
I might be wrong about that. It might be a little bit earlier than that. But he was extremely xenophobic. He was very racist. And he was a product of his times, but even by his times, people were like, "Dude, you're tone it down," for his time. So actually, as his books and his stories were put out over time and reprinted, they were edited. Mm-hmm. They were edited to take out offensive words and offensive phrases and that sort of thing. So there is a press called Arkham Press, which I don't even know if it still exists, that put out the unabridged, original stories. They were all compiled into 3 volumes, and I bought them. So I have all 3 of those volumes here, and some of it's hard to read. I mean, some of it's like, dude, seriously, come on. Yeah. We understand you're afraid of brown people and not white people, but come on, they're not all trying to kill you. Settle down. So when my kids want to read something like that, I'm just like, listen. You're going to read some things in there that are going to sound really alien to you, and it's not about the space part. It's going to be like, how come this dude, named his cat the single most offensive thing you can probably name a cat just because it was not white. and I'm just like, that was the way things were back then. Even by that, I just give them
and that's what that individual was like back then. Yeah.
And I think that's the way we have to look at it, because if we try to erase that past, if we try to forget that past, then we don't learn from it. We think that it didn't happen. That's the biggest problem.
Right.
Thinking that it never was that way is much worse than looking back on how it was and going, wow, we should make sure we never do that again.
No, the importance is having the discussion about it.
Yes.
Yeah. You don't want it to just be thrown out there without any context, because that also is problematic. So yes, I agree with what Disney's doing. I agree with what Warner is doing, and I agree with what Alamo Drafthouse is doing, because that's how this whole story started.
Yeah. So from comments here, of course, DJ has to try to get in here again, weasel his way into the podcast. Here he comes, DJ. I just wanted to give a follow-up. All right. Oh, just a follow-up, huh? Couldn't have sent this with the original email, could you, DJ?
Well, he really couldn't, because there's the follow-up. This is the end of the story.
Yeah, right. Watch the story continue next week, guys.
It could.
Part 14 of the DJ saga. Let me tell you more about my SVS amps. Because he knows we'll talk about that with SVS. Anyways, he wanted to mention that when he had his power blackout and his SVS subwoofers died, he actually asked SVS directly if there were fuses he could replace. They told him their current amps don't have replaceable fuses in them, so they have to swap out the whole amp, which is what he did. Well, I mean, if you don't want to put a fuse in your thing and it gets blown up by lightning and you told us to plug it directly into the wall, well, it's your own dang fault. So there you go.
Good information to have, though. Now we know.
Yeah. All right, let's get into the questions here. Infinite Gary. He's I think DJ's looking at Infinite Gary going, how can I top that dude?
That's right.
How can I get more questions on the podcast than Infinite Gary?
Good
Infinite
luck.
Gary, for those of you who haven't listened to this podcast for longer than like 17,000 years, Infinite Gary's name is not because he asks infinite questions, which he does. It is because he has an infinite baffle sub.
That is where that came
you're
from.
Like, what is the infinite baffle sub? No. That's all I'm going to say about that. Infinite Gary, he says, the technical director and president of Marantz did an interview with Part-Time Audiophile that talked about the tuning of the newest Marantz receivers and pre-pro. And at one point they said they're going to cultivate the old soul who drinks whiskey. Mm-hmm. Sounds like nonsense to Gary. But is there anything significant to this talk of tuning these receiver and pre-pro models? No. No. I'm going to say definitively no. What this is marketing speak for, please buy our stuff. We would like you to buy this stuff. And if you buy our stuff, you're sophisticated and classy. Which is exactly what people want to feel when they spend a lot of money on a pre-pro or a receiver. We put all the best components in it. No, you didn't. You put the best ones you could for the price point you wanted to hit. I'm sure there's more expensive stuff out there, but you looked at it and said, it's not any better than what we're putting in here. And that's what you went with. So, they're tuning Marantz and pre-pros and receivers to be, get out of the way and just send the signal out as it comes in, unless you want it changed, in which case you use Odyssey and then Bob's
the
Uncle.
editor app. Yeah, it's a very linear frequency response that they're going after. Instantaneous impulse response, or as close to it as they can get. That is the starting platform. And if you look at things like Audioholic's measurements of them, then that is virtually what they're achieving. Of course, no product is completely 100% perfect, but no, they are going for linear frequency response, instant impulse response. That's the starting point. So, is it theoretically possible to do such a thing as intentionally tune an amplifier to be nonlinear? Yeah, you definitely could. Speakers all the time are tuned. You can change the values of crossover components. You can change the, how much magnetic power there is in the magnets that are behind the drivers. You can change the cabinet volume inside of the speaker, or how much stuffing there is in there, or the port tuning. Yes, you can absolutely tune audio components, including the electrical components. You can tune them to be something other than completely linear and transparent to the signal. But Denon and Marantz, by the objective measurements taken of them, that is not the starting point. If you want to alter it as a user, you have the opportunity to do so. There's a graphical manual EQ built right into the receiver or pre-pro, and there is the Odyssey editor app where you can choose a new target frequency and then measure against that, and it will try to correct to your chosen tuning. So there is tuning. But yes, as Tom said, this is marketing speak. They're on a place called Part-Time Audiophile. So they're saying, we're going after the perceived reader or listener of this outlet, saying, these, I guess they're assuming, tend to be probably an older crowd. That seems to be what they're talking about. So
I don't really care. Yeah.
I agree with Gary. It's a bit of nonsense saying that.
They just want you to buy their stuff,
That's
dude.
right.
Just buy
of course
their stuff.
they do.
Buy your stuff, and women will want you, and men will want to be you.
It's the old,
That's
if we can like sort of confirm, what you already want to hear, then, you'll side with us. You'll come on over to us.
Yeah. Gary says there has been a clear increase in the number of available ultra-short throw projector models targeted at the TV and home theater market. Long term, do we think this trend will continue? And since the projector sits at the front of your room beneath your screen and fires upward at a very steep angle or downward at a very steep angle, can you see the beam of light below the screen? Is it distracting in a dark room? I don't know about the second part. I've never seen one of these things that are made for home theater. I've seen the old style ones that they used to have where the thing popped out the front and had the three big lights on it.
The old
you know
CRTs.
what I'm talking about? Yeah, the big CRT ones. You could definitely see the light coming bleeding around and going up and stuff.
Think about your own long throw projector that you have, where yours is mounted on a shelf on the back wall. If you look up overhead, you can see that beam of light going from the lens of your projector to the screen. So yes, in a blacked out room, with the ultra short throw projectors, you can see the beam of light that is shooting up. It's a very wide triangle coming out of that thing because it's like less than a foot from the front wall, but it is filling the entire 100-inch diagonal screen. So it's a wide triangle of light. But yeah, in a fully blacked out room, you can definitely see that beam of light that's going between the lens of the ultra short throw projector and the screen that's up there. It's one of the reasons why they are better suited to a room that has some ambient light. I mean, that is the scenario in which they can outperform a long throw projector. Just full stop. I'm like, if you've got a room where you can never get it pitch black, I would probably take one of these new ultra short throws over a JVC, because the advantages of the JVC are going to be when you have a completely blacked out room. That's where they'll look better. So I think it's different scenarios. I think it's great that such a thing exists. But yeah, in a fully blacked out room, I probably wouldn't want the ultra short throw right out, if I'm the sort of person who can be distracted by seeing that there is a beam of light coming up there. Do we think the trend will continue of seeing more of these ultra short throw projectors? I don't know. It depends on how well they sell.
Honestly, I see this as a flash in the pan. I think they're throwing a lot of stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. This is always the case. People have been asking about it. I'm sure they've gotten enough emails that somebody has said, you know what, maybe we should throw one out there and see how it sells. I think in the long run, this is not a super viable technology for home theater because, like Rob said, it's kind of dependent on your room. Which means that you now excluded the serious video file, and who buys thousands of dollars worth of projector and screen other than the serious video file? This has always been to me a business or application of a projector. You have limited space, you want to put a whole bunch of them up there, you don't have to worry about people walking in front of it, or your ultra short throw is your solution to that. Make it super bright, no one really cares about the colors anyway, so Bob's your uncle. I just don't see this going. I just don't see this unless they can bring the prices down.
Well, that's just it. Yeah,
below the 75-inch, 65-inch, 85-inch direct view models. That's your competition. It's not projectors. Your competition is direct view TVs, and I don't know you're going to get the prices down that low. Yeah,
like people obviously can make the value argument because right now you can get a pretty darn good ultra short throw projector. I mean, there are some that are about $2,700 right now, but they have some issues. Although obviously people put up with compromises in flat panels as well. So let's call it around the $3,000 mark. You can get a pretty darn good projector, and then you really do need a proper screen to go with one of these. You need an ultra short throw screen to work with one of these, and they're like, if you go with Elites, you can go with their lower end one, which ironically is the CLR2, which is lower end than the CLR without a number. But the CLR2, you can get like a 100-inch version of that for, just around $1,000. So let's say it's about $4,000 to get like a 100-inch of these. Now, the value argument is there because you're not going to find a 100-inch flat panel for $4,000, no matter how many compromises you make. So people who are just wanting that sheer size, they can do that. But I agree. I think if they can bring the price even lower, and I do see that as a possibility because we're seeing plenty of $1,500 4K DLP projectors right in that sort of price range. Now, you have to have the higher brightness with an ultra short throw. You have to have the lens. So maybe they start making, more corners cut, right? The lens isn't quite as good, but kind of good enough. Maybe it's not quite as bright, but kind of good enough. If you can start bringing that down to like $2,000, if there's maybe another screen alternative that gets below $1,000, and now all in you're under $3,000 for a 100-inch screen size, I could see it improving there, but I don't necessarily see ultra short throws ever taking over the videophile projector enthusiast high end. Because to do that, I mean, we have ones that can do that, but they're $20,000, $30,000, and they don't have the incentive to bring that price way down. They're going after the super high end, don't sell very many of the market. So I think if this trend is to continue, they have to push the price even lower. I think they can. So yeah, it'll exist for a while once we start getting modular displays, which is still years away. That's still 5-10 years away. And they're going to be way more expensive than this. So yeah, I think we got like 10 years for ultra short throw projectors to make a mark, and I think they can. I don't think they're going to disappear. I'll put it that way.
I don't think they'll disappear. I just don't think they're ever going to be a serious
really big. Yeah. Oh no. I mean, the 75-inch flat panel. That's going to be what sells more than anything.
Yeah. more than anything.
65, 75, yeah.
Yeah, it's so hard to get people past like this whole 55-inch number. You know, they think anything bigger than 55 inches is somehow massive.
Apparently, 65 is now the best-selling size.
Yeah,
in North America,
which is just basically one. In most cases, it's one up from 55.
Yeah.
You know, that's as far up as people are willing to go. And you see 65, 70, 75, 85 inch. 85 inch. What am I going to do with that? I'm like, actually sit in your seat and see it.
Right.
I don't know. Be able to read the scroll at the bottom of the screen. How about that? You sit like 15 feet away from your TV. It's 55 inches. Oh, 65 inches? Oh, great. It's just a slightly larger porthole.
Let's see, those people could go with an ultra short throw. It'd be perfect for them.
It would be. There's no way they're going to do it, but it would be, yeah. So Gary had a bit of fun with the guys from his audio shop, telling them about how many audio setups he has and how he even has 2 subwoofers in his bedroom. What humorous conversations have we enjoyed thanks to our home theater setups? I mean, I talk about this all the time. I mean, we talk about humorous stuff on this podcast all the time.
That's true.
Does the podcast count? I mean,
sure.
I mean, I don't really know that I've had... I don't like to flex. I guess that's, and I mean, I don't really think of it as flexing, but I don't like to when people tell me about their home theater stuff, I don't like, oh, really? No, I don't do that. So, you know, I don't really talk about my home theater outside of my house ever to people because no one understands it and it doesn't really do me much good. The last time, and I have not talked to a salesperson at a Magnolia or a high-end shop in well over a decade. I have gone into some, but I have not talked to anybody. So, no, okay. A couple of years ago, I went into like a custom installer that has a showroom here in town. It's right next door to a really good Cuban place called the Bodega, and I walked in there and talked to them a little bit, but I talk all about my home theater stuff.
Okay.
I just don't.
For me, one of my cousins, back when I worked at Future Shop for a while, Future Shop, which is now Best Buy in Canada, they got bought out by them, but when I worked there for a while, and so he was like, oh, hey, I want to get just a compact, inexpensive surround sound system. At the time, Athena speakers were still around. I miss them. You remember that, what was it, the Micra 6? Remember that speaker package? Oh, I loved recommending that thing. That's what I recommended to my cousin. He was very happy with it. So it was like a few years later, this was once I had got my 11 speaker setup, which for the time was for DTS Neo X. Because that's what we had. So, I just asked him. I was like, you still using those Athena speakers? He's like, oh, yeah, I love them. He's like, hey, what's in your home theater these days? I'm like, yeah, I got 11 speakers and 2 subs that are 4 feet tall each. He's like, geez. So, yeah, that was humorous.
All right. Zakir has a Denon X2100W receiver, Yamaha C605 front tower speakers, and some Klipsch quintet satellites for surrounds. He has an SVS PB1000 sub, and he says he did a subwoofer crawl to find the best position and adjusted the phase. He ran the Odyssey, which is Odyssey XT, so it's a couple of generations, is it 2 back or something?
Well, no, I mean, it's 1 step down from XT32.
Right. And it assigned a 60 hertz crossover for his towers and a 110 hertz crossover for his Klipsch quintet surrounds. He is not satisfied with his bass. Is it due to a speaker mismatch or bad room acoustics or something else? Since you just randomly played with the phase knob, I'm going to blame that. But it's almost certainly, I mean, 1 sub in a room, and he hasn't told us anything about the room. The 60 hertz crossover, first of all, the first thing I would do is adjust that up to 80 hertz there. I would leave the 110 for the Klipsch.
Yeah, and that's very reasonable. The 110 for the Klipsch Quintet speakers, that's perfectly in line with their specifications, and that seems like a very reasonable setting, so I wouldn't touch that. But yeah, you could definitely try raising the crossover that was automatically set for your Yamaha Towers up to 80. But that's a minor thing.
If you were sitting here in the room with me and we were talking about it, the first question I would ask you is, how did you do your subwoofer crawl?
Yeah.
Because if you put on like Biggie or Run DMC or something like that.
Honestly, if you followed the advice that is given a lot of places about how to do a subwoofer crawl, so no blame on our side. Because if you look up how to do a subwoofer crawl, this is the common advice. Where
you have to come to our website or basically our website to get anything other than put on your favorite bass heavy music and crawl around until it sounds good.
Yeah.
So what happens when you do that is, if you're lucky in your favorite bass heavy, music or whatever, first of all, you're not getting anywhere near the lowest registers, not even anywhere near the lowest registers, which is where you're complaining your bass doesn't exist. Basically, you're like, how come it's not crushing my room? Because it's a PB1000. Well, we don't know the size of your room anyways, but it should at least crush a little bit. So more than likely what happened is you ended up where it sounded loudest, maybe, I guess, at that spot. And those, whatever those notes are, maybe they are a hump, maybe they are where they're supposed to be, or maybe, one or the other. I mean, they're going to be someplace in between there. They're not going to be a dip, because if they were a dip, you wouldn't be hearing them. So you put your sub there, and you sat back in your seat and said, I am not hearing this lowest bass that I was expecting to hear. Well, that's because we didn't do the subwoofer crawl listening to all the bass frequencies. Because when we're listening to all the bass frequencies, what we're listening for is a uniformity of volume, okay, as best you can, from the top of the sweep to the bottom of the sweep. And remember, the top of the sweep, we probably start about 150, maybe sure. 200 if you're really, wanting to give yourself some time, because, your subwoofer is playing up this high. You're not hearing a whole lot of it because you're crossing it over at 80, but you want to definitely give yourself some time to get it down to that 80. And then as the bass sweep goes down, then you're listening to make sure that you're not hearing it like the volume suddenly disappear. That's real bad.
Yeah.
And you're not hearing huge volume increases. That's the proper way to do a subwoofer crawl. And it doesn't require you to touch that phase knob one iota. Right. I don't know that the phase knob does you any good with a single. Let's put it
in
this
fact,
way.
That's a clue that he probably was following the very common advice that you'd find anywhere online when it instructs you how to do a subwoofer crawl, which is not good advice.
Somebody who's been in this industry for, I can't even remember how many years at this point. It's got to be close to 17, 18 years in this thing. I have never adjusted the phase knob on a subwoofer. I've never done it. I mean, I've flip the switch and sometimes, but I've always set it back to zero. I've always set it back to zero in the end, even if it was a knob and I kind of messed around with it because I was like, I can't hear the difference, put it back to zero, and went on with my life. With what we're talking about in this podcast constantly about how to set up your subs properly, you shouldn't really have to play with the phase knob unless you have an oddly shaped room and you're trying to set up multiple subs.
Or you've done the subwoofer crawl with a bass sweep. So that's the important part here. You want to play a bass sweep. You want to play the bass sweep on repeat. You have the subwoofer sitting in your chair. The bass sweep is playing on repeat over and over and over, and you are going around your room. Number one priority to find the spot where there are no big dips in the volume in that bass sweep. If there's a hump, a reasonable hump, not a overwhelming hump. If there's a hump in there, you can fix that with some EQ. Odyssey will largely be able to handle a hump, but a dip, there's not much you can do. So you definitely want to not have any big dips in the volume as that bass sweep plays. Now, I will point you to a site called audiocheck.net where you can make your own bass sweep, including there's a little checkbox that says marked. And if you do that, then every 10 hertz, it will make a little kind of squelch noise, like a walkie-talkie squelch noise, so that you can count the squelch noises and roughly know what frequency you're listening to. But for a subwoofer crawl, you just do a bass sweep. You don't even need the little squelch marks in there. It doesn't really matter. You're listening to the whole sweep and hoping that the volume stays pretty darn close to the same volume through that whole sweep as it's playing on repeat. So that's number one, is doing the subwoofer crawl properly, which, again, believe me, all the advice other than from us basically tells you the wrong method of doing it. So glad that you found us. Now, once you have achieved that, then we have pretty good confidence that the subwoofer and the room and your one seat are not really the problem with your bass anymore. Does that mean you will be satisfied with it? Not necessarily, because your preference might not be for a completely linear, accurate bass. Nothing wrong with that. But we want you to have that as your starting point, so that you're saying, okay, I'm hearing pretty darn linear, accurate bass. Now, if I want to change that tuning, by all means, we can go ahead and do that. Number one thing I would have you do is, in the Odyssey setup, make sure that the setting for a dynamic EQ is turned on. Because most of us aren't listening with the master volume dial on our AV receiver turned all the way up to 0 dB, full reference volume. And when that is the case, when you have some negative number on your volume dial, then our ears do not hear bass as well as they hear mid-range. So as you turn the volume down so that dialogue is at a nice acceptable level, or the person singing voice is at a nice acceptable level, to our ears, the bass has gotten more quiet than it really should have. Dynamic EQ brings that back to sounding like it's all relatively even. It keeps everything audible. So those are two easy settings to do after you've done a proper subwoofer crawl. If you still want more bass than that, well, yes, you can start turning up the trim level of the sub or increasing the bass. There's the treble and the bass tone controls. You can start doing that. With an X2100W, he doesn't have the option of using the Odyssey Editor app. It's a model that's older than that existed for that, but you can even go to like the graphical EQ that's built in and start boosting the bass there if that's what you want to do. But yeah, that should get you to a point where at least you're starting from the bass being quite linear and accurate, and you'll tune after that. And yeah, we'll suggest raising the crossover on your front speakers to 80.
So you asked, is it due to speaker mismatch or bad room acoustics or something else? There are basically saying bad room acoustics is it's kind of an oxymoron. The room acoustics are generally not good. If you're not in like an auditorium that was specifically designed to amplify sound, and you can think about this as like the Hollywood Bowl. They have like that big like sort of seashell thing behind the musicians, so that it projects the music out without them having to use as much amplification or whatever. That's good room acoustics. Of course, it's outside, but it's good room acoustics. In our case, all room acoustics are almost always detrimental. We can try to minimize them. We talk about the golden ratios of the sizes of your room, the different lengths and widths and stuff like that you can do to make it not as bad. But basically, once you get down to the bass, it's the room is like getting in the way. So we are trying to work with your room to get it as good as possible. So I wouldn't say that your room acoustics are necessarily bad. They're just room acoustics, and we just have to figure out where to put the sub within this room. Now, if you start crawling around and doing your stuff and you find that there's always dips and there's always problems in your place, and say there's 5 places in your room you could put it, that's a lot. Most people are lucky if they have 3 viable options for a PB1000 because it's a large sub. If you sat in all of your places and you're like it's all got dips, that's when you go up there and you start messing with the phase a little ticks at a time to see if you can get rid of it that way. That's the only way that I would say with a single subwoofer you're really going to want to start messing with that phase knob. And it's only after you've done, you made sure you've got your sweeps and stuff. But like Rob said, if you Google all the subwoofer crawl, none of it says to do a bass sweep.
We're like the only ones. But as far as speaker mismatch, like this has nothing to do with you having Yamo fronts, Klipsch surrounds, and an SVS subwoofer. The brand matching has nothing to do with it. The front speakers having different capabilities than your surround speakers, that has nothing to do with it. So it isn't that. And I think hopefully that'll put them on the right path.
Subwoofers are speaker agnostic. They don't care which speakers you pair them with because there's no timbre that's really coming into play down there. Okay. Jeremy on Twitter. Jeremy was thinking he'd get an Epson 5050 UB, but he has an unusual restriction. He has to use a projector ceiling lift, and it has size constraints. A projector ceiling lift, and it has a ceiling lift?
Yes.
What is that?
So imagine you have a T-bar ceiling. But one of those ceiling tiles has a scissor lift above it where the projector lives. And so the scissor lift can come down, lowering down that one ceiling tile, and the scissor lift has to live on top of that, or the projector has to live on top of that scissor lift.
Okay. Anyways, a scissor lift has size constraints. The projector can only be 41 centimeters wide by 46 centimeters deep, roughly 16 inches by 18 inches, and the 5050 UB is too big. Can we suggest reasonable alternatives that will physically fit? Dude, how connected are you to this scissor lift? I mean, it sounds like that's your real problem right there. Just get rid of that thing. Just get rid of that thing. Get a mount like a normal person. What's wrong?
I don't know, man. These are the parameters with which we were given to work. So
okay. Well, I don't have the answer to this question. You know that's the case.
Alrighty. So I have one option that is about $1,000 more expensive than a 5050 UB, and I have one option that is about $1,000 less expensive than a 5050 UB. I had an option that's right about the same price, which is about $2,700, but it is physically too large. BenQ's HT5550 for about $2,700 was the first thing that came to mind as an alternative to the Epson 5050 UB, but it is a little over 19 inches wide, and this lift that he's using has to be about 16 inches wide, so that one wouldn't work. So, performance-wise, what would I think would be a pretty good alternative to 5050 UB, and this is why I want to mention on this podcast. JVC not only has their DILA projectors, their 4K DILA projectors, they had one DLP model that came out a little over a year ago, and I wasn't super impressed with that particular one because it was over $2,500, but not really any better than the $1,500 DLP projectors. But now they have a new one, which is, I'm showing on YouTube, the LXNZ3 or NZ3. Goes for $3,700, so it's not super cheap, but it is a laser light system. So you are getting an upgrade in terms of the light path. You're also getting an upgrade on the color fidelity versus what most of these DLP 4K projectors are using. This is one of the models that uses the 1080p native chip but wobbles it 4 times. But you are getting this laser light engine and a 6-segment color wheel that gives you pretty darn good wide color. Also, if you read the literature on this LXNZ3 from JVC, you'll see them talking about auto HDR. That is not frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping, but what they do have are different tone maps where they will read the HDR10 metadata, and based on that metadata, they have a selection of a few different tone maps that will be automatically selected to try and give you the best image, but it is not frame-by-frame, so don't read that into it. But that one, physically, it's just about perfect. It's 15 7/8 of an inch wide and only 13.5 inches deep, so no problem on the depth there. But I was thinking, hey, he was looking at a 5050 UB that goes for about $2,700, so clearly $3,700 might be more expensive than he was really hoping to pay. So physically, the next best choice that I can come up with is Epson's Home Cinema 3800. So this is a 1080p LCD that gets wobbled twice per frame, but it is compatible with 4K signals. It is compatible with HDR. It doesn't have the deeper black levels that the 5050 or in fact that JVC offers, but it's pretty decent on color. It has good brightness and it's got the compact size. It is 16.1 inches wide. It will just fit into the 16.1 inch width of your scissor lift, but for $1,700. It's certainly affordable. The Epson Home Cinema 3800.
How come he's not talking about the height?
Well, because it can come down 2 feet, so the scissor lift can.
Yeah, but there's no. So I don't know. I guess I'm not seeing this thing in my head properly.
Well, I mean, it has to fit within the joists of the ceiling, I would imagine. And then,
well, I know, but the scissor lift, they collapse, right?
Yeah.
So they collapse. So when they stretch out, it's got to come in at that angle, right? The scissor lift.
No, but it's like a scissor thing on either side that goes up and down on the 2 sides.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not squeezing into the middle. It's up and down this way.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. Whatever. I'm just throw the thing out. You get the projector you want.
I'm just happy there's there were legitimately a couple of things I can recommend without feeling terrible about it. I'm these actually fit and they're pretty darn good. I mean, that JVC, I'm kind of excited about that. $3,700, it's a little bit up there in price, but it's a pretty nice option to have. That also happens to be a 4K DLP with both vertical and horizontal lens shift, which is unusual. So laser light engine.
How long do those laser lights last?
20,000 hours.
But really, because they say those LEDs are supposed to last like 50,000 hours when you buy them from Home Depot for your house, and they last 3 months, just like incandescents do, somehow magically.
Well, I don't honestly know. I haven't driven a laser light engine protection to death, so I don't actually know. But they claim 20,000 hour life.
Believe it. David from Bonnie, Scotland. I don't know how to do the Scottish accent.
You clearly do not.
Try. That's just so very obvious. So David's using a pair of Mordaunt-Short Mezzo 2 bookshelf speakers with a Yamaha receiver. He'd like to add a center speaker for around $500 USD. He has read about the importance of selecting a really good center since it's the most important speaker in the surround sound setup. Dude, who is trolling me today? You guys are just
mostly me. I mean, I'm putting it in there because I know it'll get a rise out of you. But hey, once again, can we blame a man for having read this? I mean, come on. It's written everywhere.
Yes, I blame you all. Why does nobody agree with me? I got in a fight with Gene over at Audioholics about it, and he would not relent. Oh, yes, the center channel is the most important speaker. I'm like, really? What other speaker can you unhook from your system? And your system will go, well, that's fine. We'll just make it up. We're good.
Reroute it, and you won't even notice it unless you sit way off.
You won't even notice.
If you sit way off
That's
center,
right.
You'll notice it.
You're going to sit in the center? Yeah, don't worry. You won't even know it's gone. You'll think it's still playing. I got this. That's your receiver to you when you unplug the center channel and say, I don't have one anymore.
Where we do agree is if you are going to have a center speaker, yes, we do want it to be a good one that matches your left and right. We don't want it to be completely inadequate compared to your front left and right speakers. That would be a bad thing. So yes, if you have a center speaker, we agree. Let's make it a good one,
and also make it timbre match.
That's very much
what
important.
You definitely want to do that. So, anyways, he's considering one of the Dolly Vocal models that includes their ribbon tweeter. But how will it go with his Mezzo 2s? I would have guessed not very well. That would be my guess.
You're right. Yeah.
Based on the fact that you're going with a completely different model with a completely different tweeter.
Would not be my first leaning.
No, it would not be mine either. Mordaunt-Short is a company that I've had some experience with, and I've always pretty much liked the stuff that I've heard from them. You know, it's all very reasonable. I haven't heard a ton outside of shows, you know, trade shows and stuff like that. But you know, the people I've talked to, you know, the engineers I've talked to over there have all seemed like, you know, they are trying to put together a really good, really nice little speaker at a good price. That being said, surely you can find something else that Mordaunt-Short sells that would qualify as really good and also match tonally with the speakers that you currently have. Because if you're going to go dolly for your center, you might as well sell the left and right and start over again and get just all dollies up front. But I have a feeling that this dolly is probably exactly at that $500 USD price point he wants to hit.
What it seemed like to me was that it wouldn't shock me if he's reading What Hi-Fi, very popular publication over in the UK, because they have a glowing review, of course, of one of the Dolly vocal centers with the ribbon tweeter. And so I'm thinking maybe that got into his head. You know, they're praising this one speaker as being like this fantastic center speaker. So he's saying, hey, I want to add a center to my system. And
these have like aluminum, like the Mezzo 2s have like aluminum dome tweeters.
Right.
I mean, it's not even close.
It's not even close. More than that, though, in the exact same series from Mordaunt-Short, you have the Mezzo 5, which is the center speaker version, which has the exact same driver complement and the exact same timbre as your Mezzo 2s, and it goes for $350 US, so it is definitely within your $500 budget. I mean, if your idea is to keep your Mezzo 2 bookshelf speakers, I would 100% go for the Mezzo 5 center. There's really no reason I would point you to anything else. Now, like Tom says, if you have gone out and auditioned the Dolly Vocal and been like, hey, this is the center I want, well, then it's time to sell your Mezzo 2 bookshelves and get the matching Dolly bookshelves that go along with that Dolly center. That would be the way to come at this. I wouldn't be keen on mixing your Mordaunt-Short bookshelves with the Dolly center.
Yeah. And again, I will continue to say that if you can find another speaker in your system that I guess a subwoofer would be the other one, right? That you can say it doesn't have a subwoofer in your system. We'll go like, all right, well, we'll just try to make everything else play the bass.
But in that instance, there will be a bunch of sounds in virtually every case that you just stop hearing. Whereas if you take the center speaker out, but you still have front, left, rights, like you'll still hear all the sounds that the center would have made.
That's right. That's right. Least important speaker in the whole system. Least important. I'm going to have that on my headstone if I have a headstone. The center is the least important speaker in the system.
That's right.
Fight me. That's what it's going to say.
Listed in Tom's obituary under cause of death.
Cause of death.
Told a home theater aficionado that the center speaker was the least important speaker.
went to a stereophile event with a placard.
They're not the people that talk about center speakers.
Dwain is using a Def Tech BP9040 Tower speakers. He also has an A90 Atmos modules attached to them with Def Tech's proprietary connection. The binding posts for the A90 modules are built into the BP9040 towers, and then there's a plug on the top of the towers for the A90 modules. There's no way to use the A90s all by themselves. He's considering switching to Martin Logan ElectroMotion ESL electrostatic speakers. What's our opinion? Would we consider that to be a good upgrade? I'm going to click on this because I haven't seen these guys in a while.
I mean, they're pretty standard looking Martin Logans. It's the big sort of grill looking thing that you can see through. It is a true dipole where there is just as much sound coming out of the back of the Martin Logan electrostatic as there is coming out of the front. It's mated to a traditional 8-inch driver to handle the bass.
Right.
It'll be different. Man, it will be a different sound.
What are you going for here? I guess is my thing. I mean, because you lost me at Atmos modules. I'll be honest with you, because when you said Atmos modules, I was like, okay, so this is home theater, and then you said I want to go with electrostatics, and I'm like, oh, it's 2-channel. So if you're going for 2-channel and getting away from home theater and focusing more on that aspect of it, well then yes, this would be probably a really good upgrade, to be honest with you. I think you'd probably find it to be exceptionally engaging, as long as you didn't move too far to the right or the left.
Or forward or back or up or down for that matter. I mean, you
would not be as engaging for the people sitting next to you. To definitely be engaging for you.
I mean,
there's something wrong with this.
What really strikes me here, like let's imagine that he uses his Def Tech BP9040 towers, which are the traditional Def Tech bipole design that Def Tech is known for, where they have drivers on the front and the back of this speaker cabinet, but they're in a bipole configuration. They are firing in phase with one another, and then they have side firing, self-powered 8-inch quote-unquote subwoofer drivers built into those BP towers. And then he's also added Atmos modules. Now, let's imagine he is using that setup for music listening. He has essentially gone for some of the most diffuse sound that you could go for music listening by having a bipole speaker firing sound out the front and the back, all in phase, no cancellations, plus Atmos modules, right? Using, let's say, the Dolby Surround Up mixer, which a lot of people enjoy for music, but he has gone for essentially the most diffuse type of sound that you can get from music listening. And hey, maybe that's what you want. I've got no beef with that. But to then transition to Martin Logan electrostats is the polar opposite of diffuse sound. Now, you might be looking at an electrostat and going, well, look at how open that driver is. Certainly, it's going to have this wide open diffuse sound, just like my bipole Def Tech towers, but it is the complete opposite. There is literally cancellation of any sound going to the side of electrostatic speakers. It's a true dipole. The back is 180 degrees out of phase with the front. There are full cancellations of sound. And with an electrostatic speaker that has as close to a laser of sound as you can get from a speaker.
That's exactly right.
It is the least diffuse sound. Now, an electrostatic speaker can deliver imaging to a single listener, basically, the likes of which only headphones can rival, because the sound is so directional and so close to being a laser-like sound that you can actually have quite a bit of difference between the left ear and the right ear, between your front left and your front right electrostatic speakers. And you can get the type of holographic imaging that headphones can give you. Electrostatic speakers can make it sound like a sound, started in front of you and passed through your skull and went out the back, which is difficult for most traditional speakers to do. But yeah, it's like the polar opposite in imaging to what you have right now with your Def Techs. So, would you consider that an upgrade? I don't know. That's a personal choice if you would call it an upgrade. You would certainly hear a difference. I would not expect you to listen to these two pairs of speakers and go, I can't tell them apart. That would shock me to no end. These are about as different as you can get. So, I mean, hopefully just that description of how different they sound will allow you to sort of judge, is that the type of difference that I want to, go after? Is that the change I want?
Yeah, if you haven't listened to these things in the showroom, there is no way I would ever recommend you buying them.
Right.
If you haven't sat down with them and said, "Oh my God, this is what I've been looking for.
Right.
This is what I thought I was getting with Def Tech, and I didn't get
Sure.
it. And now that I've got it, I can't be without it." Then why are you asking us?
Well, yeah.
First of all,
Yeah, exactly.
because you had your answer right then. But if you're asking us, it makes me think you just saw them and you were like, "Well, these look neat. Maybe I should buy these." And in which case, I'm like,
Or read a
you need
review
to
or
listen
whatever.
to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to listen.
And
to
like
them.
we've got no beef either way, Someone who's like listened to
No.
the Def Tech and been like, "Oh, that is what I want." I'm like, "Great." Someone who listened to the electrostats and they're like, "That is what I want." I'm like, "Great." We're not telling you not to buy one or the other. But yeah,
Right.
you definitely want to audition it first because it's a very different experience.
So he's using his tower speakers along with SVS subs. His Def Techs have self-powered 8-inch subwoofers. Let's just put the subwoofers in quotes built into them, and those have their own volume control. The manual actually recommends running just one pair of speaker wire and then adjusting the volume for the 8-inch subwoofers to your preference. But they say to set the speakers to large if you do that, and then describes the option to run speaker wire and an RCA subwoofer cable using a Y splitter. And it says to set the speakers to small if you do that. The Martin Logan ElectroMotion ESLs also need to be plugged into a power outlet and also have an 8-inch woofer, but they don't have a volume dial for the 8-inch driver, and they only have one pair of binding posts, no RCA subwoofer input. So can we go over how to set the speaker format for a home theater configuration? I don't know if I put the ESLs in the... But okay. First of all, you will run... I think you just run the speaker wire to your Def Techs. This is the hardest part about Def Techs for me, is that you gotta figure out the volume that you're getting from the top end of the speaker and the volume you're getting from the bottom part of the speaker and make it be the same. Which is why I hate built-in quote unquote subwoofers. I don't like them. I don't want them.
Plus,
now,
with that bipole design, they are definitely picky about placement. How close they are to your side and back walls, it really makes a difference with Def Techs.
So, you are going to have to somehow figure out, either by ear or by sweeps and everything else. I mean, you'll have to figure out that the volume isn't changing that much. You can have you set up your sound pressure level and do a sweep, and then keep adjusting that volume knob until that little needle stays pretty steady.
Yeah.
And then never touch the knob again. Okay.
And also never move the speaker again. If you do, you'll need to touch the knob again. Yeah.
Don't move the speaker. Don't move your seat. No, it should stay the same. As long as your seat should be fine. You can move the seat a little bit, but not the speaker. And then you take the Def Tech manual, throw it away, and you set your speakers to small.
Yes, always small. Whether you have the Martin Logans or you have the Def Techs, your AV receiver, your front, left, right speakers are going to be set to small. That is never going to change. And you are going to run one pair of speaker wire to either of them. You are not going to run a subwoofer cable to your Def Tech. Not the way we would recommend setting up speakers. There's going to be one pair of speaker wire going to either of these. So the setup is uniform. Whether you end up with the Martin Logans or you keep your Def Techs, one pair of speaker wire and the front speakers set to small. But yes, with the Def Techs, there is going to be some fiddling because you do have to
Rob,
adjust.
what about all the bass I'm missing from my subwoofers and my speakers? Shouldn't I be using that, Rob? We're going to miss it.
The crossover is all the way up at 330 hertz, I think it is. You are definitely still using that self-powered 8-inch driver. It's not that it's going to waste in any way. We want your subwoofers handling the deep bass below 80 hertz. That's why we're setting them to small regardless. So yeah, that's how to come at this. You can sort of think of the Def Techs as just having an additional bit of tuning that needs to be done to them. But the whole point is that we're trying for linear accurate sound. That's at least where we want to start for sure. So yeah, you're going to be playing some sweeps, and depending on that, you might have to adjust the subwoofer volume dial. Now, why do the Martin Logans also plug into a wall outlet, but the 8-inch driver doesn't have a volume dial on the Martin Logans? Well, the plug-in to the wall there is for the electrostatic stators that are powering that electrostatic panel. There is a tremendous static charge that is built up for that electrostatic panel. That is what the electrical wall outlet is for. The 8-inch driver is just a passive 8-inch driver like it would be in any other passive speaker, so there's no wall outlet power going to that.
Right. John, John was looking to get the new Yamaha RX V6A receiver with HDMI 2.1 ports. While he was over at Costco, he found the Yamaha TSR-700 with a price of only $429 instead of the $599 MSRP.
Mm-hmm.
The box didn't have HDMI 2.1 listed on it, so he wasn't really sure if it was the RX V6A just with a different model number. It does appear to be a Costco exclusive. What do we say? I didn't say that this is the first second I've ever looked at this question, and it's going to take me a second to figure it out. Let me look here.
And while he's looking, I'll say it's a good find because it's the RX V6A, just given a unique model number for Costco so that no other retailers will have to price match what Costco is selling it for. It's got the exact same features and appearance as the RX V6A that you'll find anywhere else, but it is listed as a Costco exclusive, and they happen to be selling it at a nice discount. Good find is what that is. The TSR-700 from Yamaha.
I love the Cyclops look the new Yamahas have with the volume knob smack dab in the middle of the thing. They're like, you know what? No one looks at this thing anyways. Let's just put the knob in the middle.
Can you find the
volume
volume knob?
There should be a crank on it so that you can start it up.
If you can't find that volume knob.
All right, Mike has a room that is 14 feet from front to back. His seats are close to that back wall, so he sits about 13 feet from eyes to screen. But go on. The seating setup is not going to be changed.
There you go.
Are you sure? Are you sure we can't convince you? Move it forward just a little bit, because we could save you. Listen, you could move your couch forward. Hell, you could turn your couch around and face the other wall. You could have a real good field of view. Here,
sure
audio imaging wouldn't be so hot, but your field of view would be phenomenal. All right, 13 feet from eyes to screen. And at that distance, there isn't any flat panel that can give him the screen size he would like. There is, you just can't afford it.
Yeah.
The media room is heavily used. TV, gaming, and movies, and it's used at all different times of the day. Lights and windows can be dimmed, but definitely cannot call it light controlled. So a while back, he went for an ultra short throw projector, no screen, he just used his white wall, and he wound up casting an image that's 140 inches. It looked horrible. But sheer screen size mattered more to him, so he lived with the compromise. Now that UST projector has died.
Yeah.
If you haven't taken it out back like Office Space with a bat killed it, then you're doing life wrong, my friend. You're failing at this. All right. He isn't willing to go way down in screen size for a flat panel, but he definitely wants an image quality upgrade. He liked the sort of quality that the Epson 5050 UB can provide, but he still isn't going to have light control, so he's willing to get a screen this time. Okay, well, at least he's compromising.
That will be a help.
And he's willing to spend as much as $8,000 in total for the screen and the projector. He's discovered, though, that with his room being only 14 feet from front to back, the Epson 5050 UB wouldn't be able to cast a 140-inch image. In fact, you will find that almost all of the things shouldn't be casting a 40-inch image anyways, but whatever. Its lens needs to be just shy of 14 feet from the front of the screen for that size, and then there's the 18-inch body of the projector. In addition to that, he tried looking on the ABS forums for ambient light rejecting screen suggestions, but it seemed like an unwelcoming place where everybody just defended their own personal choice to the death. Really, I've never experienced that there. There did seem to be a general agreement that you had to balance the level of light rejection with the gain and sparklies of the ALR screen, though. So Mike can envision Tom just rolling his eyes at all of this. Can you hear it? Probably coming through on the mic.
Right.
That's my eyelashes. They're getting away as I'm rolling. So bottom line, what do we recommend? The room with its ambient light levels and the seeing distance, they are what they are. He really, really still wants to have that large screen size as close to 140 inches as possible. He's willing to pay quite a bit and compromise quite a bit to get there. What do we say? I say if you compromise down to 135, you get like a whole bunch of more options that are pretty good.
I mean, 120 is where the world completely opens up for ultra short throws and their screens. But yeah, there are 130, 135 if you're really pushing it options. So I mean, first of all, I don't think you should go for a traditional projector in here with a what's called a regular ambient light rejecting screen. I think you should go ultra short throw. I know you had a bad experience with one, but first of all, you were just casting it onto a white wall, so you weren't really giving it its best opportunity to look its best. And second, I think this was a few years ago where we didn't have like the newest ones that are targeted at home theater, so it probably had pretty poor color. It was probably a business aimed projector that was meant for a conference room, because that's the type of ultra short throws we had at the time. So a fair amount has changed in the interim. Plus, you're willing to get a dedicated ultra short throw screen this time if that's the right way to go. So I think that is your best bet for a multitude of reasons, but primarily just that given the ambient light situation that you're in and all the things that are out of your control and can't be changed in this room, it's as good as you're going to get. Now, is it going to look as deep in the blacks as a 5050 UB could in a pitch black room, a dedicated Batcave theater? Absolutely not. But when you have light in this room at pretty much most of the times that you're using it, the ultra short throw is going to be the better choice. So I'll start with the projectors because it's pretty easy. I think you should get the Optima Cinema XP2. It's a brand new model. It's $3,300, so it is certainly within the sort of budget that you were considering. Now, the thing about the Cinema XP2 is we do have to consider, you're thinking like, hey, I can make the image pretty much whatever size I want, just have to pull it away from the wall a little bit. And that's true to an extent, but there is focus. You still have to pull focus. And they say that it's, designed to go up to 120-inch image size. That's the focal range of this projector is between 100 inches and 120 inches. That's what it's targeted at. Could you go a little bit larger and still have the focus? Maybe it's a touch soft, but not too bad. Yeah, probably. There's probably a little bit of extra leeway.
Oh, man. Blurry? You're going to really go with blurry? I don't think I could do blurry.
Right.
I could do color and accuracy. I might even be able to handle lip sync issues before I did blurry. Blurry would absolutely kill me.
I mean,
I think lip sync I could get past.
I'm thinking his old one had to be a little bit blurry because the ultra short throws just weren't really meant for 140 inches. So, there could have been multiple compromises. But regardless, it's a reasonable price. It's a darn good looking projector. It's got better accurate color than the P1 did last year. Its input lag, they have a new gaming mode because last year's was like 180 milliseconds of input lag, and he mentions gaming's a thing, and that was way too much. Everyone's like, the P1, no, you can't use it for gaming. The P2, they have a gaming mode. They've gotten it down to about 50, like they say 48 milliseconds. It's not fantastic, but there isn't a lot that's like any better in ultra short throws. Again, the compromises you'd be making by going to a traditional long throw projector, I'm like, that's going to be one of the compromises. 48 milliseconds of gaming lag, not fantastic, but I don't know if he's like hyper competitive gamer in this setting anyway. It would seem a bit unlikely. So, the alternative to that, if you want a projector that for sure can go up to 135 inches, it would be Samsung's brand new The Premier LSP9T. Now, that's $6,500, so it's not cheap. It's a $6,500 projector, but it's a triple laser and an actual red, green, blue laser that can do the full Rec 2020 color gamut. It's like the only consumer product like under $30,000 that can, so it's kind of amazing on that front. Its input lag for gaming is also right around 50 milliseconds, so like I say, it's about as good as it gets on that front. But if you're willing to pay that much for the projector, $6,500, then that LSP9T from Samsung is a pretty amazing option. So that brings us to the screens. What are we going to do for the screens? Now, if you're saying what is the absolute best ultra short throw screen that I can recommend, in my opinion, that is IlluneVision's Aurora ultra short throw. Now, this one has like a sawtooth design with like the Vanta black coating on the top parts of the sawtooth so that any light coming from the top is like completely absorbed, and then a reflective layer on the bottom of the sawtooth, which is where the light from your projector is shooting up onto that sawtooth. So in terms of the image quality that you're going to get, it's about as good as it gets, is that IlluneVision Aurora ultra short throw. However, the maximum screen size for that is 120 inches. So, it'd be really, and it's $3,500 for that 120 inches. So you could spend about $3,500 on the screen, 120 inches, and $3,300 on the Optima Cinema XP2. The projector actually being less than the screen. Both of them top out at 120 inches, so they're a good match that way. You'd have the better screen, but the slightly smaller image size. So IlluminVision does have a less expensive alternative. They have their reference ultra short throw. Now this one is it's not like a sawtooth exactly. It's a little bit more like wavy. It's a little bit curved, again with sort of an absorbent layer on the top parts and a reflective layer on the bottom. But it's not like the Vanta black coating, and it's not a full sawtooth, so it's not quite as good. Doesn't project the light quite as well. Doesn't reflect the light from the projector quite as well. But you can get down to about $1,700 for that screen, and it is available all the way up to 150 inches. There's a 135-inch size. So if you go the 135-inch size, it's going to be over $2,000 for the reference ultra-short throw from IlluminVision. Maybe you pair that with the $6,500 Samsung, blow your $8,000 budget, but you get the size that you want, more or less, and the amazing color of that Samsung. Lastly, I'll mention, if you want the less expensive screen, like both of these screens from IlluminVision are more than I wanted to pay. Elite screens, I mentioned this earlier in the podcast, they're Aeon CLR. Do not go for the CLR2. Okay, the CLR2 is a flat screen. It doesn't have the sawtooth. It doesn't have the waves. It's just a gray screen with gain. So that's not the one to go for. But the CLR is a sawtooth design. It doesn't have the Vanta black. It's not quite as advanced as the IlluminVision, but it does have the sawtooth design. And it's $1,500 for the 120-inch, but that's the biggest size that it goes to, is 120 inches. Those are pretty much your good options. I don't think you should get a long throw projector in your setup.
Okay. All right. Sounds like what's in this room is somehow blocking him from moving his chairs any closer than they currently are. So it's probably other things in there. I don't know. Pool table or something. Who knows? All right. Dan. Dan is trying to find a good audio compromise for his approximately 12 by 12 bedroom. His wife really doesn't want anything that looks like a regular stereo setup in there. She would prefer to keep the price of anything new to about $500. So with everybody. Although as much as $1,000 is possible. They are using a Yamaha YS207 soundbar at the moment, and the small wireless subwoofer isn't cutting it for Dan. He owns an SVS subwoofer already, so he'd like to use that. He just needs something with a subwoofer output and really good sound quality to replace a soundbar, but there's no room on their dresser, which they use as their TV stand, for regular speakers. Any suggestions? So this is not going to be like wall-mounted speakers or anything like that. She wants a bar. It sure seems like
what he's looking for is either a sound bar or a sound base that has a subwoofer output instead of coming with a wireless sub where your only option is to use the included wireless sub. He wants one that has a subwoofer output, but, good sound.
What was the one my parents got? What was that?
So that was the Hios bar, but it does not have a subwoofer output. You can mate it to the wireless Hios sub, but he wants to use it with his SVS since he already owns it, which makes sense.
Well, he's already got a Yamaha, and Yamaha does have options.
They do.
And lots of options that have these abilities. So I would like to say that if you at least introduce your wife to like Orb speakers. I know they're not something that you would normally think of in this application, but she's looking for non-traditional speaker things, and she may be thinking to herself, the options are black boxes on the sides of the TV or a black box underneath the TV. I'll take the black box underneath the TV any day. Well, if you introduce her to Orb speakers, she might look at this round chrome speaker and go, that doesn't look like a speaker at all.
Right.
You're right, it doesn't. And this can be wall mounted.
Especially if you're going for any of the new Echo devices or the new HomePod Mini, which are also spheres, then you can have more spheres that produce sound. That's a possibility. Another possibility, if you have some place that you could hide, like say a Marantz Slimline receiver. Maybe you've got a place where you could hide that and it wouldn't be out and visible. One of Kef's speaker bars, which has that all three channels are built into one long bar. I would probably recommend, in your case, the HTF-7003, both for physical size and for price reasons. But that would be another option. However, it does have to be powered by a traditional AV receiver. It's not a sound bar with the amplification and inputs already built in. It's just three speakers that happen to share a tube housing that looks like a sound bar. So yeah, Orb speakers or a Keft speaker bar plus a Marantz Slimline, that's a possibility. But let's say he can't have an AV receiver anywhere. It just all has to be built into one thing. Like Tom mentioned, Yamaha, I would actually point you to I guess you would call it a downgrade. I mean, the YAS-109, which is a very traditional looking speaker sound bar design, but it does not come with a wireless subwoofer, and it does have just a regular RCA subwoofer out jack. It is basically the sound bar portion of the YAS-207 that you already have, just minus the wireless subwoofer and plus a dedicated subwoofer output instead. So if you're satisfied with the front speaker performance of your existing YAS-207, but you just want the different subwoofer option, then the Yamaha YAS-109 is a great choice, and you can actually get it from Accessories for Less for $140, which is well under your $500 budget.
I was going to say, on the Yamaha website alone, it's like $200.
It's $200 MSRP.
It's on sale there.
That's right.
It's like,
yeah. So you can definitely get it for under $500. Now, I'll point you to one other option because I was perusing around Accessories for Less to see what they have. Now, they actually have Focals. What is that thing called? The Dimension? The Focal Dimension. Normally, it's a $1,500 soundbar solution, and the way Focal did it is it's actually it does have a passive subwoofer that comes with it, but it's designed to go behind the soundbar and basically act as a stand for your television. But you don't have to connect the passive subwoofer, and it does have a regular RCA subwoofer output on the Focal Dimension soundbar, but it's also huge. It is, it's a big old honking soundbar. It is not subtle at all. It is, I mean, you kind of have to put the TV on top of the passive subwoofer, because if you put the TV behind the soundbar, it would block a good portion of the bottom of your screen. It is an enormous soundbar. I almost don't think there's any chance that you want it, but normally that thing would go for $1,500. Accessories for Less, because it's a discontinued model, has it for $500 right now. And I mean, the sound quality on it is going to be terrific coming from Focal. All the reviews that anybody has done of it are like, yeah, there's top-notch sound quality. You would want that for $1,500 normally.
What are these controls on the back of the thing? Distance, 1, 2, 3, position.
Oh,
4,
I know.
5,
it's got
6.
little dip switches for you to change like how close it is to the walls and how close you are
It's
to it
crazy.
and your room size.
And it's got keyhole mounts for...
It's got bizarre stuff. It's enormous. I can't almost envision anybody using this thing. But whatever. It's $500. I thought I'd mention it because it's kind of a fun option.
Can you put your TV on it? You can put your TV on the subwoofer part, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he's got a big old dresser. Who knows?
Yeah.
All right, Karl. Actually, let's see how much time we got left.
We should have about half an hour.
Karl's APC J15 battery backup died. It's not just a battery replacement. He has been in touch with APC, and they will actually be paying to replace it. Wow. But of course, the J-type and S-type units have all been discontinued. While you're talking with them, ask them why and tell them that we are very disappointed.
I mean, I'm pretty sure it's because
they're coming out with something new.
Yeah, a ton of our current devices, including like the PS5 and the Xbox Series X coming out, are now using these PFC, these power factor correction power supplies that are very finicky when they're attached to anything other than a pure sine wave power source. And APC's old battery units all did a stepped approximation to a sine wave. Wasn't much of a problem for older equipment, but these PFC power supplies that a ton of electrical equipment, mostly computers, but the game systems and that are using now, they need that like basically pure sine wave output. So all of their new models that APC is bringing out have the pure sine wave output. I don't really know why the S-type had to change, because it always had pure sine wave, but they're just kind of changing their battery technology.
Probably they wanted to all look the same.
Yeah, over at APC. So I suspect there will be some AV-centric new models coming out in 2021, but for the time being, we don't have them.
All right, but of course the J-type and S-type, he's been told by ABC that he can ship his J15 to them on their dime, and they will repair and return it, but not until January. So in the meantime, he knows we've suggested some current APC models. Could we go over those again? And in addition, are there any alternatives from other brands that retain the same sort of horizontal design and form factor the J15 had? I mean, there's Panamax, which I don't know what they're making these days, but my APC sits on top of my Panamax. Mm-hmm. Now, Furman, Panamax, I think that's the same company. If they're still out there making stuff, they're just more expensive and in general, and I found the functionality to be not quite as good as APC. And when I say functionality, like the Panamax is just like it works. I mean, it's got like a couple of, but it's like, why doesn't it have more of the outlets connected to the batteries? And why is the battery, whenever the power fluctuates, why does it have to beep? And why does it take forever to make it stop beeping? There's like all sorts of like weirdness to it that, the newer APC units in particular are all like Wi-Fi enabled,
USB ports on them. Yep.
They just got like all the bells and whistles, and the Panamax is just sitting there going, "Yeah, man, your power's out, beep beep, power's out." Listen, if you're not backing the truck up in my home theater, you could just stop it with the beep.
At least it's
letting
you know.
That has the same form factor.
Okay.
I don't know that I would necessarily buy something like that. I mean, they're pretty expensive.
Right.
But he does want to have some protection, at least if he's got a projector.
Yeah.
I would be worried about that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if it were me, what I would do is APC makes a bunch of, and I know this because Rob and I just like last week or the week before, we're going through units online at Amazon because I want to have a little APC battery backup that had coax cable.
Yes. Yeah.
Protection, because I am installing an outlet on top of my cabinets, on the wall on top of my cabinets, where I'm in it. The electrician keeps looking at me like, "Why am I doing this?" I'm like, "Because I'm paying you. Shut up. Get up there. Put an outlet up there." This doesn't make any sense. I don't care. Put an outlet up there. So it still hasn't been done. It was supposed to happen last week. It was supposed to happen today. Still hasn't been done. I don't know if he's in revolt or what, but I don't care. Put an outlet up there. So I'm having an outlet up there because I'm bringing in, because my modem was, when I moved into this house, was installed in the garage, and I've always hated it being out there. It's hot, it's Florida, it's humid, it's just not a good environment for this thing. So I'm pulling that and the router and everything else into the house, and I wanted to have the APC with the. I mean, like, I could just buy a surge protector that has the cable, the coax cable, but I'm like, can I put my modem on a battery backup? Can I put my router on the battery backup? Because that sounds like a real good idea to me. So I went out there, and there's a bunch of them. But so what you really need to do, and Rob's going to tell you which ones, is you just need, and I know maybe you've been able to have the power go out and your home theater goes sail along swimmingly, and you finish your movie and go on. That's not what's going to happen here. What's going to happen is you're going to get one, in my opinion, that will make sure that your projector and any other important gear can finish its cooling cycle long enough for you to turn it off, and that's going to be what you're going to be doing here. And then you're not going to be trying to finish a movie or go through the rest of your the TV show that you're watching. You just want to make sure you're protecting that gear. And then after your APC comes back, you'll take this thing and then like hook it up to your computer or to your modem or to something else. So which one should you get, Rob?
Well, yeah, I mean, honestly, it's a bit more battery life than what you just described there. Probably not enough to like finish a whole movie, but enough to like get to the next save point in your game, which is pretty much exactly what APC is aiming at with the current alternatives. So with the J25, J35, and J15 all gone now, what I'm suggesting from APC are their back UPS Pro units, and specifically the ones under their gaming performance series. So these have model numbers BR1000MS, BR1350MS, and BR1500MS. The numbers in there are the number of volt amps, and you get larger and larger batteries as you go up in there, and the ability to supply more power from the batteries as you go up in there. So these have normally a tower form factor. You can lay them on their side. It's not a problem if you want to lay it horizontally, but they sort of look like they're meant to have a tower form factor. That's the way the readout on the front is, that tells you how much power you're drawing and how much time you have left on the battery. And on the back, they have 10 outlets, 6 of which are connected to the battery and 4 of which are surge only. Then you also have coax protection in there and Ethernet protection on the back. And yeah, if you laid this horizontally, then, some of the outlets would be right side up and some of them would be upside down, but it can all be done. So those are the alternatives I'm pointing most people to these days. The 1500 is, like the easiest choice to go because it's the biggest one. It'll give you the longest battery life. $220 going there. Now they do have a couple of new units just ready to come out. They actually have a BR1500 MS2, which just adds one more USB output on the front. So they don't even have an image of that one yet, but that's pretty much the only difference between the original MS and the MS2. Keeping the same price, $220 for that one. But they they also have some with updated aesthetics, really targeted at Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5. A little bit higher price, $260, but the capabilities are all the same. It's available in both a black and white finish. So those are the BGM 1500 MS. But if you want one that really looks like the old J15, it looks like something that's meant to go in your rack and looks like a traditional component, aside from the Panamaxes that Tom mentioned, I'm going to throw out there that there is Surge X. The price goes way up.
Yeah.
This is a $1,500 unit. All right, so it's way more expensive than what your J15 used to be. But what you're getting with the Surge X unit is a completely different type of surge protection. These are not a metal oxide varistor. It's not an MOV in there that is self-sacrificing. And MOVs, when they're getting an overcurrent, they're dumping a whole bunch of noise into your ground line, and they're sort of shunting power that way until they sacrifice themselves when there's a surge large enough for a lightning strike. These are a series mode protection inside of the Surge X. It is not sacrificial. It is in fact cleaning the power as it's working. It'll just keep going forever and ever and ever. Strike it with lightning pretty much as many times as you want. Long-lasting battery in here, but it only has 6 outlets and only 4 of them are battery backed up. And again, the price is way up at $1,500, but it's sort of a different class of power protection. Somebody actually asked me on Twitter, like, when does it make sense to pay that much more? And it's like, when you need 100% uptime, when you can't have a situation where a strike is going to, cut your power, because an MOV, once it sacrifices its life, that's the end of the APC. Your power is as good as out at that point. When you need 100% uptime, dead reliable, and you're willing to pay the, extra $1,000 to get it, that's where Surge X makes sense. But there's absolutely scenarios where that is justifiable.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Panamaxes that are not even as nice as the one I have,
right,
and they're like $1,000.
Yeah.
And they have like 8 outlets, maybe 6 outlets on the back of them, and only half of them look like they might be
battery. Yeah. That's why it's hard to justify, right? That's why, you got the APC that are reasonably affordable and rock solid performance, but they'll sacrifice themselves to protect your equipment. And then you got the Surge X, which it's more expensive, but you're getting something for that money. And it's like the ones in between, I find it harder to justify.
Right. When APC entered the surge protection and home theater, battery backup, surge protection, power conditioning market for home theater, they just were like, I don't know what y'all been doing around here, but all this crap's too expensive.
Well, I mean,
We're going to do it.
I expect that if they do have new AV-centric models that they're planning to release, that it's just going to be these back UPS Pro units in a different form factor. Like, why would you change the underlying technology? There's no real reason to.
All right, Manuel.
I think it's Manuel. One of those. Hopefully you know that we're talking about you.
Anyways, whoever this dude's name is, he's got his BenQ W1070 projector. He's like, it's me. Yep. And a Marantz SR6014 receiver. His sources are a DirecTV box, Blu-ray player, and an Amazon Fire TV stick, plus an Xbox One. Xbox One has its video calibration test patterns. It does?
Oh, yeah. You never seen those?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's got video calibration test patterns for your brightness and contrast.
I never went through it. I had my projector calibrated by Clint, so I didn't
right, okay.
Because I'm lazy. And when you're adjusting the brightness setting on your display, you're supposed to be able to just barely see the image of an eye on a completely black background. But that didn't happen unless he switches the HDMI mode on his BenQ projector into PC mode. When he does that, he can get the Xbox One test pattern to work and his games all look correct. But then when he goes into any of his other sources, they all look washed out. If he switches his BenQ back to auto for the HDMI mode, his other sources all look fine, but his Xbox One has crushed blacks. Is there a way to fix this? Boy, I really want to blame Microsoft for this, but I feel like there's something else going on here.
The issue is that the BenQ W1070 projector does not show blacker than black. So we need to explain that a little bit. So because what you've got, so we'll just use 8-bit color values because that's what we're dealing with. With a BenQ W1070 projector where it's an 8-bit display, it's got 8-bit color values. So there are 256 values that you can have between absolute black and absolute white. There's 256 values. They're labeled from 0 to 255. Now, video signals, like everything that's coming out of your Blu-ray player, your Amazon Fire TV stick, your DirecTV satellite box, they all use the video range. And the video range only uses between the values of 16 and 235. All right, so you've got the full range that goes from 0 to 255, but in video signals, they call 16 black and they call 235 white. Now that leaves you some values between 0 and 15 and from 236 to 255 that are called below black and above white in a video signal. So there's headroom, basically, on either end of the signal there. Now, when you switch the BenQ into PC mode for its HDMI input, it is now expecting a signal that goes all the way from 0 to 255. It is not looking for what would be called the limited range between 16 and 235. It's looking for between 0 and 255. The Xbox One has the ability to output either. It can output RGB PC mode, which is all the values between 0 and 255, or it can put out RGB limited mode, which is still an RGB signal but only between 16 and 235, or it can put out a YCBCR mode, which is a color conversion and color compression mode that also uses the video range between 16 and 235. So when the BenQ projector is in regular, limited, or YCBCR video mode, it is only looking for values between 16 and 235. And if any values come in below that or above that, it just ignores them. It acts as though they aren't there. But the brightness and contrast test patterns built into the Xbox One rely on being able to see below black and above white to use those test patterns correctly. And it just doesn't work. The eye image that you're supposed to see on the black background or the gray eye on the white background, they just completely disappear. And the test pattern is very difficult to use. So that's a limitation of your BenQ projector. So by putting it into PC mode and then having the Xbox working in RGB full PC mode, yeah, that test pattern works, but you get exactly the results, which is your video signals are like, well, I'm not sending you a 0 value for black. I'm sending you a 16 value for black. And the BenQ's like, oh, well, that's gray. That's not black anymore. I'm expecting black to be at 0, not 16 when I'm in PC mode. So you're like, okay, I'll go ahead and set you, the BenQ, back to auto mode. It's like, okay, now 16 is black, but hey, the Xbox is still sending black at 0, so everything from 0 to 16 is just crushed down to black, and you lose all your shadow detail. So the solution that should work, hopefully, the BenQ should stay in auto mode. That is for sure. But the Xbox, you should have the option of setting it to RGB limited mode, not RGB full, RGB limited. Now, the test pattern still isn't going to work. All right, you're still not going to be able to see the eye when it's below black, and you're still not going to be able to see the eye when it's above white. It just doesn't show up. It just vanishes on the BenQ. But at least you won't have crushed blacks on your Xbox that way, and you won't have everything washed out on all your other video sources that way. It's kind of the only solution. What you can do with that test pattern is still raise the brightness enough that the eye does show up, and then like click it down one click at a time, the brightness setting, until the eye like just disappears. And then it's basically correct. That's about as good as you can do. But yeah, you want the RGB limited mode coming out of your Xbox One.
Right. Aaron. First up, Aaron just won the second hour endorsement of Edimotics earplugs and earphones. He owns a landscaping business and a farm, and he's tried a lot of different hearing protection options. I'm glad you're doing it, dude. There's a lot of people around here who are doing lawns who don't.
Yeah.
Edimotics have been the best in his experience, so he was happy that we mentioned them, and he highly recommends them for anyone who wants to protect their hearing.
I fully endorse that seconding of our endorsement. Thank you, Aaron.
You can't second yourself.
I can third myself.
Can't even.
He's like, I second you. I'm like, yes, I also agree with you and me.
So he had a plan for his basement home theater. He was going to get a 77-inch OLED and a 7.2.4 Atmos configuration to keep the field of view nice and big. He was going to have primary seats only 7 feet away from the OLED. He did the walkthrough with his wife, and he could tell she wasn't really on board. What gave it away? Was it the shoulders, or was it the huffing? Because that's what usually gives it away for me. She wants the seats closer to the back wall. They don't have to be right up against it, but she isn't a fan of sitting so close to the TV with the seats almost in the middle of the room. On the plus side, when he told her they need to switch projectors, she was on board, so Aaron was excited about that, and he figures he will go with the Epson 5050 UB. Since the seats will now be 2 feet from the back wall, do we say how wide this thing is? He didn't say yet. He's also decided that to downsize to 5.2.4 configuration. He figures Tom will be happy with about that.
He knows you hate surround backs. Any excuse to nix them, apparently.
I don't hate them. I just don't think they're as necessary as other people do. He has already purchased in-ceiling speakers, but they're not installed. Would it make more sense to have top middles instead of top rears now, correct?
I would say so.
I mean, just 2 feet off the back wall. We got to move those seats just a little bit further forward. Just a little bit further forward. And honestly, I would put prime elevations in the back corners, or maybe even down the walls a little bit, and call them top rears, and then front heights, top fronts. I would do.
I mean, honestly, you could even if your speakers are physically positioned as top middles, you can still label them as top rears if you want to. They're still going to function just fine.
Yeah. So for the front pair of in-ceiling speakers, should he still put them at a 45-degree elevation angle in front of him and firing straight down? If he has top middles, would he have to label the front as front heights? Correct.
Mm-hmm.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And yes, you should have them in front of you and going straight down. That is also correct.
At a 45-degree elevation angle if you can. All still good.
He's just a little bit confused and concerned because anytime he sees diagrams, front heights are always shown on the front wall and angled at the seats. So will the top, middle, front heights labels work all right when all 4 of those speakers are in ceiling and firing straight down? Yes.
Yes, they will. Absolutely fine. If you further look at the diagrams, they will say, there's a range where the front height label can work, and it's anywhere between a 30-degree and a 45-degree elevation angle. So you're like, hey, 45-degree elevation angle, perfectly fine. And yeah, if you call the ones that are rearmost, but they're basically directly above you, then yeah, you label those as top middles. You have no option but to call the ones that are in front of you front heights. 45-degree elevation angle is perfectly fine, and firing straight down when they're in ceilings also perfectly fine.
Yeah. And, let's have a conversation with your wife here, buddy. So you can put her on. Put her on. Don't let her see the video because she won't trust me if she actually sees me. I'm having a really bad hair day. Mostly because my hair is really bad. Aaron's wife. It's very nice to meet you. My name's Tom. This is my partner here. Not that kind of partner, but my partner, Rob. And we just want to explain a little bit here about viewing angles. So when we talk about home theater and we talk about screen size, what we're most worried about is how big the screen is in comparison to how far away you're sitting from it. Okay. So if you think about when you're in a movie theater, where do you like to sit in the movie theater? So, because when you change where you sit in the movie theater, you change your field of view, or how big the screen appears to you. Okay, how big the screen appears to you. We're not talking about changing the size of the screen. The screen stays the same. But if you move forward in the theater, suddenly it's too big, right? You got to move your head to see the top left. You got to move your head to see the bottom right. You're always moving your eyes all around. You get a headache. It's terrible. Right? You sit too far back. You're like, what is this? This doesn't even look like a movie theater anymore. It looks like a TV on a wall. It's not as engaging. So here at AVRant, what we try to do is try to get people into the correct field of view. Now, normally what I would tell you to do, Aaron's wife, is go to a movie theater. Now, I'm not suggesting that now because you'll die. Sorry, that's just the way it is. I don't know about your politics, but, don't go to the movie theaters right now. As somebody who is highly invested in the home theater market, I can say that with no bias whatsoever. So what I would normally say is go to a movie theater, find out where you like to sit, right? And while you're watching the movie that your husband drugged you to, that you didn't really want to see anyways because it's full of Marvel characters and who cares about that garbage, I would like you to look up at the ceiling tiles. There's usually tiles on the ceiling. There's not always, but there's usually tiles on the ceiling, right? And you could look up there and you could count the number of tiles from the right above your head all the way to the front of the room. And you would say, that's the number of tiles that from me to from the front of the room. And then you would count the tiles from the left of the screen, the image, not the screen, but where the image is, to the right, or vice versa. It doesn't matter. We go both ways here. And you would remember that. And that is the ratio. That's the field of view that you like. If you indeed pick the seats, which if he didn't let you pick the seats, then, divorce him. So sit there and think about how big you like that screen to be. Now, remember, in your own house, you get to pick not only where the seats are, but you get to pick the size of the screen. So in order to get that same ratio, that same image size, feels like being in a movie theater, but I don't have to move my eyes or my head to see stuff. To get that, you have two options. Well, you have lots of options, but two main options, right? You pick where your seat is, and then you get a screen big enough to give you that sense. Or you pick the screen that you want, and you move your chair till you get that sense. So when your husband, Aaron, was looking at the 77-inch OLED, which is a fantastic TV, by the way, really, really nice. It would give
and they're down to $3,700 now. It's getting
very
getting
crisp
nice and
image.
affordable.
Very, insanely good performance. Now, you may not care about the performance, but, overall, that image will be better probably than anything you would see in the movie theater. Now, when he was looking at that, he was saying, I want to sit this 7 feet away, and that's because I want to make sure that I'm getting that field of view that we like when we go to the movie theaters. And you go in the room, and you go like, well, this is way too close to the wall. That's ridiculous. That seems very silly. I need it to be on the other side of the wall, other side of the room, so that it looks right where the seats are. This is where we can have some fun. Because if you decide to move that chair forward so that you get that field of view with that 77-inch OLED, then you have the rest of the room to turn into whatever you want. You can put that back part of that room, fill it with bean bags. Put a pool table back there. Create a bar area, a seating area for people to enjoy a light snack, some refreshments while they're enjoying their home theater. The world's your oyster. That back of that room, that's all you.
Plus,
you can do whatever you want back
with
there.
an OLED, you don't have to have the lights off while the movie is playing. You can have some lights on. It'll still look fantastic.
That's right. And yes, it looks weird when you're just looking at a blank room and he's saying the chair is going to be here, and you're like, that doesn't make any sense to me. I guarantee you it will when you're in the room. Now, if you're like, I don't want the back of this room, I don't know what I'm going to do with this back of this room, that this is not, but I didn't want the back, I didn't want to do anything in here, I don't want it to be anything other than a theater, you're like, great. So now you've got a beautiful TV that you're 7 feet away from, and a half of room that you're not doing anything with. You know what you do with that other half of that room? You put another couch back there. Another row of seats. So now when you have friends over, not only do you have a theater with one couch in the weird spot in the room, now you have room for everybody to sit. Wow, how cool would that be? Plus, he gets to buy more speakers if we do it that way, which will be something we'll be discussing later. So all of this works together to create this movie theater experience that he wants, and I bet once you get in that room as it's done, you want. Now, if you decide that you really don't want the seats to be all on one side of the room, and you really just want to have one row of seats and you want it to be on the other side of the room, there's nothing wrong with that. I will say that for audio, you want to move those chairs off that back wall at least 3 or 4 feet. That's going to make the audio that'll make the audio sound better. It actually looks a little bit better. There's not this big blank space in the middle. There's not as much blank space. And for audio, it's also a lot better. And every inch forward you move, that's a little bit less cost. I know that sounds weird, but it's true. Because the closer you get to that front wall, the smaller the screen can be and still give you that cinematic experience. So as we get closer, you're spending less money. That's right. Just by moving your couch forward, you could spend less money. So think about taking that couch off that back wall more than just 2 feet. Think about moving it into the room, and think every inch you move into that room, you're just saving money that you can spend on other stuff, which will probably be subwoofers, but we'll get into that later. It's very nice talking to you, Aaron. It's Aaron's wife, and if you guys decide to stay together, we're glad to help you with your home theater. So, anyways, that was my little aside. Mm-hmm. All right, so his second question. Since the Epson 5050 can do 3D, he'd like to give it a try, but Epson branded 3D glasses have been discontinued, and any stock that's out there on the internet seems to be priced at around $100. Mm-hmm. So can we recommend any other 3D glasses that would work and are available at a reasonable price? Yes, just blink your eyes really fast, but not at the same time.
Yeah, good luck doing that. That'd be quite the muscular coordination.
So wait a second. Do I have an Epson? I have an Epson. This thing does 3D. Yep. Could I use these things?
Yes. Yeah, so what you need are active shutter 3D glasses that use radio frequency synchronization. You have to be careful because, of course, there are passive 3D glasses out there. They won't work. There are DLP link glasses out there that actually use flashing on the screen itself from the projected image. Those won't work. And there are infrared synchronization glasses. Those won't work. And there are Bluetooth synchronization glasses. Those won't work. You need radio frequency synchronization active shutter glasses. There are a few options. Samsung has a model that worked with some of their 3D TVs that used radio frequency active shutter glasses. The 5150 is the model you're going for. You can still find those for about $50 a pair. So it's half the price of the Epson branded ones, but still kind of expensive. Sony also has a model, the BT500, which the BT does stand for Bluetooth, but it also does radio frequency and still works. I can find those for about $52 a pair. So right about the same price as the Samsungs. Now, there are some cheaper ones that will work. There is one called, what the heck is this brand name? Elikliv? I don't know, Elikliv. They sell them in a 4-pack. I don't know if you need that many, but it's $86 for 4 pairs. So, much less expensive per pair. That's for darn sure. However, a lot of the reviews point out that they don't have any padding for the nose bridge. It's just like a hard piece of almost square plastic that goes over your nose. They actually put the USB charging point on the underside of the nose bridge, which is the worst place I can imagine. So many people have said they're not exactly comfortable to wear for any length of time. Not sure I'm super hyped on those. So, as crazy as it sounds, there is a brand called Cinetron. These are super cheap. They sell them in a 2-pack. It's $28 for 2 pairs of 3D glasses. Super cheap. They will also probably break. Not the glasses themselves, but the parts that go over your ears, the stems. Everyone's like, yeah, you got to be careful taking these on and off. But they also cost $14 each, so maybe you don't care that much, and they function, and if this is just a very occasional thing that you want to have some 3D glasses around, the Cinetrons could do the job. $28 for 2 pairs.
I might get those.
Yeah.
All right. I know that I went long on that little side note, so we'll answer one more question and then we will be done. All right, Andrew. Andrew asks, do we have any opinions on Edifier speakers? They're one of the best-selling speaker brands on Amazon, and they have a number of rave reviews on YouTube. Well, then, I don't know what else you want us to say. YouTube likes them. No misinformation has ever been spread on YouTube. I don't know why they would start now. Most seem to be about the inexpensive R series that range from $70 to $250 a pair, but also the S series that go up to about $400 a pair. Are they overhyped? Are they too good to be true? They are almost certainly too good to be true. These look a lot like Swan speakers and the stuff that used to sell through AV123. Sort of.
Edifier is a Chinese company. They're based out of Beijing. If you look through their whole lineup of speakers, it's like, yeah, you got every design here. There is no
literally
cohesive design language between any of their speakers. It's completely.
These are either OEM'd or maybe they were the basis of OEMs for other companies, or they are just flat out stolen.
I don't know. Borrowing designs that went through the same factory, something like that. So the thing is, from model to model, I have nothing that I can say that this is not a brand where I can say from model to model I expect any consistency whatsoever. Now, Audioholic,
from pair to pair too, probably.
Yeah, Audioholics reviewed the S2000, which are their $400 per pair speakers, and surprisingly, so just by looking at these, I was like, these are going to have a smiley face curve. That's what I expected to be the case, because whenever you hear the reviews on YouTube and the people like, there's more bass out of these speakers than I expected, and the detail is really crisp, I'm like, yeah, that's because they got a crazy smiley face or a V-shaped EQ curve. That's fully what I expected. But in the case of the S2000 that Audioholics actually measured, it was surprisingly linear response. Just objectively, when they measured it did not have a smiley face curve. It did not have a V-shaped curve to the frequency response. It was surprisingly even and linear. But at the $400 per pair price point, that's not wildly more or less expensive than other self-powered speakers that you can get from other brands. So one of the other things is that I could only find one of their newest models, just came out recently, that has a subwoofer output. So that was one of the knocks that Audioholics had against the S2000s, and no subwoofer output on the back of it. And we're seeing a fair number of self-powered speakers now that have subwoofer outputs on it, which is a nicety to have. I have no idea from model to model. I have some of them probably do have a smiley face curve. Wouldn't shock me one little bit. Particularly some of the comments that have been made on YouTube. Anytime you come across a person who's reviewing speakers who's not like a dedicated audio reviewer, and they mention how there's more bass than they expected from the size of the speaker, or that the detail is extra crisp, it's like, yeah, that's a smiley face curve. So I am sure that out of their broad lineup of wildly different designs, that there's got to be at least one or two that sound pretty darn good. It seems like the S2000s, by the objective measurements, are pretty darn decent design. The other ones, I have no idea.
Yeah. This does seem very much like a crapshoot.
Right.
And I would not expect a whole lot of consistency as far as pair to pair. Either speaker to speaker within the same pair. But it's hard to say. Like Rob said, we have no idea. We've never listened to them. We'd have to do
this is one of those, they are widely sold on Amazon. I have no qualms about ordering something that's like $150 from Amazon and returning it if you don't like it. Amazon will survive. Right. So you want to give them a shot. I got no beef with that.
I've just learned that recently that you really have to pay attention to when it says free shipping, free returns, because not everything is a free return anymore at Amazon. So just be careful of that. So Andrew has seen some YouTube videos that claim to be offering high-quality lossless music to listen to. Is that actually possible on YouTube? And how does the sound quality from YouTube compare to other streaming music services? I mean, it was uploaded lossless before it was converted
flat out.
From whatever YouTube converted it into. Yeah, it doesn't stay that way because they have their own encoding. Once you upload it, then it re-encodes it in order to go out, and at that point, whatever they encoded it into is what it is.
Yeah, flat out, there is no lossless music being streamed from YouTube. If you pay for a YouTube Premium, they will go up as high as 256 kilobit per second AAC. Regular YouTube, when you have not paid for Premium, tops out at 128 kilobit per second AAC. So it is definitely lossy compression, no matter what from YouTube. There is no lossless. So yeah, if somebody's claiming, oh, here's some lossless music to listen to on YouTube, no, it isn't. That is definitely not the case. That's not necessarily the uploader's fault. That is just what YouTube converts everything into, is AAC, lossy compression, probably 128 kilobits. How does the sound quality compare? Well, I mean, 256 kilobit per second audio quality from YouTube Premium is
better than Pandora.
Better than Pandora. Same as Spotify Premium. Tidal and Deezer are two places where you can get actual lossless. Objectively speaking, it's not the same as that. But I mean, whenever Tom and I have done the actual, blind testing, being able to literally hear and reliably pick out the lossy format when it's at 256 kilobit per second AAC, it's like, I can't do it. I have no confidence in my ability to pick it out strictly from the losses that are inherent to converting it to 256 kilobit AAC. So on an objective codec standpoint, if you're paying for YouTube Premium, you're getting essentially the same sound quality as you'd get from any of the premium services from the other streaming services, but it is not lossless.
There you go. All right, well, who we got left?
We have James S., Enrique V., and David on the list. There were some questions that came in Monday, Tuesday. They'll be on the list for next week.
All right, we want to thank our 123 patrons over at patreon.com. And we also want to thank Steve, who helped out Rob with the Hobbit thing or whatever, and the notes of gratitude from David, John, and Aaron.
That's right. Patreon.com/AVRant podcast for anybody who would like to sign up for a voluntary subscription. 123 patrons over there, and we thank you very much for the financial support. Steve, thanks for giving me the confirmation. Sad to hear there's no high frame rate on the Hobbit trilogy. Maybe the Ultimate Collector's Edition. Who's to say? well, the people releasing it. And David, John, and Aaron, thank you very much for the notes of gratitude and encouragement. They are very much appreciated. Also note that, yes, we have our crossover event between the HT guys, Brightside Home Theater, and us. It'll be our Thanksgiving episode. We'll record it ahead of time. So we're hoping that somebody amongst our audience will send in a question that we think is really appropriate for all 6 people to answer. There's going to be Tom and myself and Lee Overstreet. There's going to be DJ, and there's going to be Ara and Braden from the HT guys. So question at avrant.com. Send it in there. We're only going to be choosing one question to answer for that Thanksgiving cross podcast episode, but send it on in, something you'd like to hear an answer from all 6 of us. And then for our regular AVRant podcast, send your questions to question at avrant.com. That's the way to get on the podcast. We answer all the questions that are sent to that email address, pretty much strictly in the order in which they're received, unless it really makes sense to, combine one or two because they're the exact same from a couple of people. Question at avrant.com.
That's right. For AVRant, I'm Tom Antry.
And I'm Rob H. Now stay in and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question at avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.